to the nation and its leadership to honor the late former President Edgar Lungu's final wishes. Speaking at a memorial service in South Africa's capital, Pretoria, Beda says Zambia should uphold the dignity he was denied in life and now in death. Lungu's body is expected to be repatriated from South Africa, where he was receiving specialized medical treatment, to Zambia today. Kaeli Kumalo has more.
The acting president of the Patriotic Front, Kevin Beda, has lamented how former President Lungu was treated after leaving office. He recalled how his home was once surrounded by police and his gates broken down by officers who once saluted him as head of states. The Zambian diaspora expressed solidarity and agreed that Lungu's legacy must be respected and his memory preserved with dignity and fairness. Meanwhile, the Zambian government has appealed to people to refrain from inflammatory statements and hate speech pertaining to the funeral of the former president, saying this moment calls for unity, love and compassion.
Post-mortem results from the death of the Kenyan blogger who died in police custody show that he was hit on the head and his death was likely to have been caused by assault. Albert Ojwang's death has sparked widespread outrage in Kenya, with rights groups demanding that police be held accountable. The 31-year-old was detained following a complaint by the deputy police chief, who accused him of tarnishing his name on social media. An autopsy conducted by 5 pathologists who released a unanimous report revealed that Ojwang had severe head injuries and suffered neck compression and multiple soft tissue trauma. Liberia's former speaker and 3 other members of the House of Representatives have been released from prison after paying a combined bail estimated at over $434,000. The group were charged over their alleged role in the burning of the Capitol building last December. The huge blaze broke out a day after plans to remove Jonathan Fonati Kofa from his role as Speaker sparked protests in the capital, Monrovia. All 4 men face several charges, including arson, criminal mischief, attempted murder and other alleged offences. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa will participate in the G7 Leaders Summit in Canada later this week. The president will use the time to hold bilateral meetings with leaders including Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz, Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney and US President Donald Trump. He says he will engage them regarding South Africa's G20 presidency taking place later this year.
So the G7 gives us an opportunity to go and propagate our message. The message about the presidency of South Africa of the G20 and how we want to see great outcomes out of the G20. And we're going to use it as a platform to begin to consolidate what we want to achieve in November when the Leaders Summit takes place here. So it's a great opportunity, and we're hoping that there will be good outcomes.
The United States is promoting a deal that would require Rwanda to pull troops from eastern Congo before the 2 sides sign a peace deal. US President Donald Trump's administration is hoping talks will end fighting in eastern Congo and bring billions of dollars of Western investment to the region. Elizabeth Mapari has the story.
In May, Washington wanted a peace agreement finalized within about 2 months, an ambitious timeline for resolving a conflict with roots in the Rwandan genocide more than 3 decades ago. A draft peace agreement seen by Reuters as a condition for signature is that Rwanda withdraws troops, weapons and equipment from Congo. The authenticity of the document, which is undated, was confirmed by 4 diplomatic sources who said it was written by U.S. officials. Analysts and diplomats have reported that Rwanda has sent between 7,000 and 12,000 soldiers to eastern Congo to support M23 rebels.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. Headlines at 6:30 for Channel Africa News. I'm Jolani Tulongwebe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headlines, South Africa and Australia have confirmed their starting 11 for the World Test Championship final at Lord's. And the Springbok women coaches have named an unchanged starting team from their Rugby Africa Women's Cup opener today. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Well, lots to cover in this first hour. We were together for 3 hours at Africa Rise and Shine. So let's get straight into it. We're going to get our Africa Roundup, and this is when we look into the stories that have been making headlines in and around our continent that you may have missed, putting you up to speed in terms of those, and also, I guess, throwing forward in terms of what we can expect to develop on this Wednesday. Thanking the team as well. We're not alone as Peter and Asanda. We have Hlengiwe Mabaso, Joey Lihodi and Pumuzo Ramagadza on production. We have Talent Butelezi on social media handling. On news is Jwalani Tulo Mwepe. On economics news later, we'll be joined by Tabiso Lihoku on sports. You just heard Fikile Lingwati. And our technical production is by Catherine Malika. Let's take a story first, going to Sudan now in terms of our roundup. Several areas of South Sudan's capital, Khartoum, are at risk of famine, the World Food Programme said on Tuesday, with the need on the ground outstripping resources amidst a food aid funding shortfall for war-ravaged Sudanese regions. Vita Chan reports.
The World Food Programme says it has reached 1 million people in Sudan's capital, Khartoum, after gaining access as parts of the region remain at risk of famine. Sudan's army recaptured Khartoum in March from the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, which had previously blocked aid access to the city. But the situation remains critical, particularly in areas south of Khartoum, according to WFP's country director in Sudan, Lahont Bukera.
I think the area in the south, and I will just name one that's probably resonates, Jebel Aliya, is the one that was the last one held by RSF. The level of hunger and destitution and desperation that was found when the first distributions took place last month were severe and basically confirmed the risk of famine in those areas.
All right, let's take a look at this story now. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has announced the launch of a national dialogue aimed at uniting South Africans and shaping the country's future. This initiative seeks to bring together diverse voices to address the key challenges and build a more inclusive, cohesive society.
The dialogue will be a people-led, society-wide process to reflect on the state of our country in order for us to reimagine our future. The national dialogue is a chance for all South Africans from all walks of life to come together and help shape the next chapter of our democracy. Through the national dialogue, we seek a shared vision of what it means to be a South African and develop a new national ethos and common value system. It is an opportunity to forge a new social compact for the development of our country.
Israel deported Swedish campaigner Greta Thunberg on Tuesday, the Israeli Foreign Ministry said, the day after the Israeli Navy prevented her and a group of fellow pro-Palestinian activists from sailing to Gaza. Lucy Fielder has more.
Speaking on arrival in Paris, Thunberg said she and her team had broken no laws and called for the immediate release of the activists still in Israel.
This is yet another international a violation of international rights, adding to the list of countless of such, especially towards Palestinians, that Israel are committing by blocking and preventing humanitarian aid from entering Gaza.
A day earlier, Israeli forces boarded the charity vessel, which was carrying a small cargo of aid, including rice and baby formula, and seeking to break Israel's naval blockade. All 12 people on board were seized.
Well, and finally, Nigerian dog owners are finding it harder to feed their pets amid a cost of living crisis that's marked by high inflation in the country. David Doyle picks up the story for us.
For Nigeria's canines, it's a dog's life. Once accustomed to a stable source of food, they can now be seen searching for scraps in the gutter. It's a reflection of widespread economic hardship being faced across Nigerian society. For Flora, that's meant smaller portions of her daily noodles mixed with fish or egg. Her owner, Peter Anthony, says feeding Flora wasn't a concern until the government removed a fuel subsidy and devalued the Naira currency in 2023, sparking eye-watering inflation.
But now, I think to buy half of the feed is around 10,000 naira. And by the time you pick out that money in your pockets, you'll be like, something else left me.
That's how we come to the end of today's session of Africa Roundup. Of course, coming up, we zoom into the West African region of our continent as Peter will be speaking to Dr. David Matsanga to get more analysis and in-depth analysis with that political scientist and conflict resolution analyst. Stay with us.
África. Conhece o Ntivani? Claro que sou eu. Ntivani é o amante da música de corpo e alma. Eu amo música africana. Ele aprecia todos os tipos de melodias e passa os seus dias a ouvir a Channel África. Adivinha só, a Channel África quer ajudar o Ntivani e os amantes da música em todo o lado a descobrir ainda mais música incrível. Por isso, a Channel África está a convocar artistas africanos a submeterem as suas músicas. Músicos, lembrem-se de nos dar todas as informações relevantes no music@channelafrica.co.za. As submissões são a vossa oportunidade de ser ouvidos, mas não garantem inclusão na lista. Todas as submissões serão cuidadosamente analisadas para verificar se cumprem os requisitos da nossa estação. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Right, it's that time of the morning where we zoom in on a region of the continent and we take a look at some of the stories that are playing out in the region. And helping us unpack that is Dr. David Matsanga. Always good to have you on the program. Thank you so much indeed for joining us and welcome.
Yes, Ndoro.
Let's begin with this sad story that apparently the Nigerian government is failing those girls that the Chibok girls that escaped from Boko Haram.
Good morning, Africa. Good morning, Peter Ndoro. Thank you very much, my brother. We are still continuing to serve Africa. First of all, let me come to that story. It's a very, very pathetic situation that Nigeria finds itself in. First, the Boko Haram have kidnapped almost 50, let's say almost 25,000 girls are missing in northern Nigeria. And then the Nigerian government told Boko Haram that once the girls and the rescued come back, assured Amnesty International that once the girls come back, they will be rehabilitated, they will be reintegrated into the communities. What has happened is that, as usual, corruption in Nigeria has destroyed this country. Corruption has entered this situation. The situation back there now is that most of these girls who were abducted by Boko Haram are either returning to their former, jobs of terrorism, or they have been left for prey for other, calamities that are taking place in that state. So it is a very, very bad failure on part of the government of Nigeria in not, committing themselves to what they agreed with Amnesty International.
Mike Ozekome has warned that the country is sliding towards a one-party state. I mean, how real is that threat to democratic backsliding in Nigeria? What signs should we be looking at? Is this something that's real?
It is real. Nigeria is, I told you a few days ago here on this same platform on Wednesday, Peter, I told you Nigeria is a country without a country, a state without a state. In political science, which I teach up to the highest level on planet Earth, once you find a state, a country without a country, state without a country, a state, governance has collapsed. Economic activities have collapsed. Abduction, terrorism, kidnap, hostage taking, bandits. Jesus Christ. Then on top of that, corruption that has been embedded into the systems. A huge state with 250 million people, the biggest in Africa, we have done, which could have given us an example. Could be selling, if we sell our goods to Nigeria, they consume 250 million people will consume our goods from South Africa. South Africa will also pick goods. We could have done trade, but Nigeria has let us down. Peter, we are on our own. It is indeed going towards dictatorship. And once you see that, any student of political science and international relations, you see those signs, you never know. There is likelihood of the army stepping around, which you see around there in Togo, in Burkina Faso, in Niger, and Mali. There's anything could happen in Nigeria. Yes.
Let's go to Liberia now. I mean, this story is almost too incredible to believe. Former Speaker of Parliament and 3 other lawmakers facing charges including arson and attempted murder. What is this telling us about political accountability and the state of governance in Liberia?
Very sad. A man destroys his own office. It is sad. It is like someone banning your parliament in Cape Town because it's not going to be elected. But my brothers in West Africa, my dear brother Peter Ndoro, at least there is something that is coming out from these states in West Africa. Some people are very bold in their actions. This Speaker of Parliament of Liberia organized others, allegedly, because the matter is in court, organized others when he saw the vote was not coming. You notice that, Peter, African politics has become politics of the chest. The more organized in muscles, the more you can win over your friends. There is no tolerance here. So this guy saw he was going to lose the post. He organized others. They said to lose it, let's all lose. And they allegedly set fire on the whole parliament, which will take $8.3 billion to repair. That's a huge loss, like what happened in Gabon. You remember the former Secretary General of African Union? That man, Jean Ping, the one who killed Muammar Gaddafi together with the French. This guy organized to ban the parliament of Gabon and the Supreme Court of the Gabon because they had lost elections. So Africa is heading, especially the West African states, there is a lot of violence being planted in people, among people, and this is not good for Africa.
Yeah, another incredible story in Ghana. Ken Ofori-Atta, the former finance minister, is now on an Interpol red notice. What do we know about the allegations that he's facing? And could this be something that affects Ghana's political and financial stability at all, given his former position?
Yes. This is we call it the cathedral scandal. Cathedral gate. You know, Peter, people are even breaking into churches. Did you know that?
Wow.
A few days ago, I learned something that never happened to Dr. Matanga and you those days when we were growing up. A church was the most feared, respected place. But even thieves have reached a point of breaking or cheating money that is meant for the church. This horror minister exaggerated all these bills, got his cut, 10%. Usually in Africa we call it 10%, and he pocketed his money. Now, and you know very well that Mahama was not in good books. This is the same minister who hunted Mahama down. Politics also has become witch hunt. When you leave power, you want also to be you want those, when you get power, you want witch hunt those whom you have defeated. That type of intolerance should end. But on this case, the cathedral cash was eaten. The cathedral bills were exaggerated. The money, the bills of quantity of all this survey, everything was inflated for the man to pocket the money. And therefore, I think it better comes up in court and stand the trial, other than the red alert can pick you anywhere of Interpol.
All right, let's talk about the Wagner Group, their formal exit from Mali and its replacement by Russia's Africa Corps. What does that signal in terms of Moscow's engagement in the Sahel? What does it say about Russia's evolving strategy on the continent?
I am very pleased for the first time. Peter, I'm not a communist. I want to tell you, but I grew up loving communism because these guys in the West, in the East, do their things very nicely. You remember some of us got our training in Cuba and other places, North Korea. We went there for a visit with our former presidents. And let me tell you, for the first time, I'm pleased that Russia is bringing up something which is economic rather than military, economic package. That I have been to Mali several times. I've been to Burkina Faso. I've been to Niger. Those younger men, apart from the one in Niger who is almost my age mate, the other two are younger people to us. So when you reach there, they give you respect and speak out their mind. Especially the one of Burkina Faso has spoken his mind to me several times. Let me tell you, they are determined to make a change. What kills those states in that West African corridor of Sahel is infrastructure. The civilian governments were stealing money. They were stealing money, pocketing. Conde, look, Conde was stealing money, banking in France. All of them steal money. Why France backs these civilian governments? And why Moscow is coming in now to say, look, you have been with these people for 400 years, but they have done nothing. No roads, no hospitals, no schools, no infrastructure. We are going to do it. We shall give you military, but also economic. So that package, for the first time, I'm impressed with Russia's approach. While USA goes on fighting South Africa and collapsing Elon Musk, these other guys are pulling them up. They are going on. They are going to develop that place if that strategy works.
What do we know about this Africa Corps, though? I mean, is it going to operate differently from Wagner? Is it maybe just a rebranding of the same military agenda, just under a different name?
It is what you call is an ingredient of economic package with military package. They give you military protection while downstairs they are trading in your minerals. They also want minerals. Don't forget that area is full of gold, diamonds, and everything. Like Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali. They trade. They come now with a package, which America is doing, only that America is in the West. They cover themselves under this norm of democracy, which is now, there is no democracy in America left anyway. It is what we call transactional democracy in political sense, transactional democracy. If you have minerals, America will give you democracy. If you don't have, they will hit you. So you can see what is happening. They tell you, we want oil, we shall give you arms to kill Russians. So that type of democracy with Trump is gone. So what the Russians have done, after seeing America falling out with several states in the world with tariffs, they have begun now this economic corp, which is an organization where you have engineers, where you have doctors, where you have scientists coming into your region, but also these scientists are military. It is equivalent to that, or any student of international relations, like I do teach international relations, you will see that China has got military. It is the same format. When Chinese come to build your railway, they carry money, labor, they don't use the African labor. Most of the people, they work 24 hours. Some of these are soldiers. So it is a different format to Wagner. Wagner was purely military mercenarism. mercenaries who could come to kill and go for money. But these ones come and do economic activities like trading and export of minerals and other resources of those countries.
Some people might describe this as a new phase of Russian expansionism. Can Russia be trusted in your view?
I think we are switching from one colonial master to, we are staying on the frying pan? Have you seen that? Are we stable? Not from fire. Actually, we are on the frying pan, still being fried, because either side they are not Africans. It is because African Union is corrupt. Collapsed. It has gone down. African Union is no longer. If we were united, Peter, in the entire Africa, entire West Africa, entire SADC, entire East Africa, entire ECOWAS, if we were united and by now we are doing free trade, some of these countries would be talking to African Union headquarters, not talking to smaller countries. This is why we have been fragmented. This is another colonial man coming in a disguise of cop, Russian. I don't stand for on either side. But in the absence, the vacuum created by United States of America and created by the French puppetry in the region, where the French have become, their policy of assimilation, where they take things to Paris, then give us, pieces to eat, the remnants. There is nothing wrong with this. The Russians are coming in to fill the gap, but indeed, as you asked, there are also neo-colonials, that neo-colonials coming on the stage to milk also the minerals of Africa, because Africa and Africans are never united. How many of them go to Dubai and dump the money there? Look at Dubai, look at Abu Dhabi, look at Qatar, you think Africa does not have money to buy those aircrafts? You don't, your airline in South Africa has collapsed because we are not honest. You have now taken it under receivership. Yet it was one of the biggest, the flagship of Africa. Look at those type of things where Africa has failed. Russia is coming in to take the vacuum.
And that's where we're going to leave it for today. We could always talk for so long, but never enough time. But thank you so much always for your valuable insights, Dr. Matsanga.
Keep it going. I don't retire. I saw someone, that younger lady of ours, colleague is trying to retire. Don't retire yet. We are about to replace Africa. You and I, we have been on this for a long time, Peter. Don't retire yet.
Amen.
I have not retired. Look at me. I'm a general. Amen. Still going on. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely day. All right, that's our resident analyst in West Africa, Dr. David Matsanga, political scientist and conflict resolution analyst, speaking to us about some of the big stories that are playing out in West Africa. It's time for your news headlines. Here's Jwalane Tulongwebe.
SABC News headlines. The African perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Making headlines, Zambia's late former President Edgar Lungu's body is expected to be repatriated from South Africa today. Lungu died in the country where he was receiving specialized medical care last week. Post-mortem results from the death of the Kenyan blogger who died in police custody show he was hit on the head and his death was likely to have been caused by assault. And finally, a U.S. judge has denied an emergency request from California Governor Gavin Newsom to block the use of troops sent to Los Angeles to quell protests on immigration raids. Newsom says the move is illegal. I will have details on these and other stories at 7 o'clock.
SABC News headlines. The African perspective.
Right, let's find out what's happening in the world of sports. Our first bulletin on this Wednesday on Rise and Shine, the full one. Here's Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning, guys. Let's bet off with cricket news. South Africa and Australia fed the starting 11 for the World Test Championship final at Lord's today, with both teams opting to shake up their top orders with unusual selections in the top order. The Proteas will have all-rounder Vian Mulder at number 3, while Australia have moved their usual number 3, Marnus Labuschagne, up to open the betting in order to accommodate another all-rounder, Cameron Green, at number 3. Mulder is not the natural selection at number 3, of course, but has been slotted in there in order for the team to have a 5th bowling option, and specifically a bowler who can swing the ball. The most difficult selection decision, however, was between Lungi Ngidi and Dane Peterson as the third seamer behind automatic selections Kagiso Rabada and Marco Jansen, with Ngidi being preferred, despite Peterson's fine record during the WTC and the fact that he has been playing for Middlesex in the county championship this season and is consequently familiar with conditions at Lords. Action starts at 11:30 a.m. Central African Time. Now, rugby news. The Springbok women coaches have named an unchanged starting team from their Rugby Africa Women's Cup opener for their round 2 clash against Kenya at Stade Makis in Antananarivo in Madagascar today. The only change from the team that beat Uganda by 62-7 is on the bench, where Nompumelelo Mate will add impact as loose forward, with wing Nomawetu Mabenge missing out as the coaches opted for a split of 6 forwards and 2 backs for this clash. Mate last featured for the Bok women in last year's tournament at the same venue, where she played in all 3 matches. Patience Mokoni celebrated a test debut with 2 well-taken tries, and according to the Bulls Daisies wing, they are focused on the Kenya match.
We just want to take it as just the next match. We don't look at who's the team, who we're playing. We don't care if it's Kenya or any other team. We're just focusing on how we're going to execute our plan, how we're sticking to our process, and where we want to improve our work-ons. It's just that even if it feels like it has been a rivalry, it's just that it's a rivalry on the field, and off the field, you know, it's all love, but like we're just focusing on ourselves.
Now, football news. Bafana coach Hugo Bros has sent a clear message to the South African national team squad doing duty at the COSAFA Cup in Bloemfontein, South Africa's Free State province, that they must continue to show their quality because he's watching.
We had a list of 40 players. Most of them were new. Most of them were young. So what can I ask more than play with the team I have on my disposition 2 games? And on COSAFA, the coach can also put those players in the team. So the evaluation will be total after COSAFA, and then we will see for the future. Are there players we can use in the near future or maybe later?
Let's end. Tanzania head coach Ahmed Suleiman expressed optimism about the progress of Tanzanian football following the goalless draw against South Africa last week, Friday. With the Total Energies CAF Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2025 approaching, Suleiman emphasized the strides made in the Tanzanian league and the impact of foreign players in elevating local talent. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Annie Kalonji sur Channel Africa.
Nous allons danser au son de Haya, que je dédicace à vous tous, chers auditeurs, qui êtes en train de suivre cette émission Mix Vibration. N'oubliez pas, vous pouvez nous suivre à partir de l'application SABC+. Vous choisissez Channel Africa pour suivre l'émission en direct. Nous allons danser au son de Haya.
Annie Kalonji, tous les dimanches sur Mix Vibration.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Right, yeah, it's quite an event. I went to bed late last night, I got to tell you, and I was watching Senegal versus England, and they played in Nottingham at Nottingham Forest's ground. And can you believe Senegal beat England 3-1 in England? And that was the first time that England lost on home soil, in fact, lost ever to African opposition. So I think our African teams are really, really starting to make their own way on the international circuit. And Senegal in particular, I think they haven't lost in 21 matches before that. So well done, Senegal. We're very proud of you. The Teranga Lions, as they are known. We'll have more on that with Fikile Lingwati a little bit later on. Because right now, though, it's time for your world of business, news, commerce. And to take us through that, we say good morning to Tabiso Lihuko. Are you happy that Senegal beat England, Tabiso?
Yes, I'm happy, Peter.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Peter, and good morning. Independent economist Tsepo Khadima says Botswana's current government has failed to define the country's macroeconomic policy trajectory and ensures that the economy is diversified. Botswana's economy mainly depends on its garment industry. Khadima's comment comes as the World Bank's Macro Poverty Outlook 2025 has shown that Botswana may breach its debt ceiling unless fiscal deficits are reduced. The government of Botswana recently acquired 2 loans from the African Development Bank and the Botswana Public Officers Pension Fund amounting to $532 million. Khadima elaborates.
Now, things are going to look a lot more bleaker because these institutions tend to restrict the borrowers, such as the country of Botswana. And one is surprised as to why Botswana did not tap into the private capital through the bond market largely, because that would have given them some latitude in terms of how to diversify the economy. So right now I can't see them being able to diversify the economy.
Kenya's central bank cut its benchmark lending rate to 9.75% from 10.00% previously. It was the 6th monetary policy meeting in a row that the Central Bank of Kenya has lowered the rate. In a statement, the bank says there was scope for a further easing of the monetary policy stance to augment the previous policy actions aimed at stimulating lending by banks to the private sector and supporting economic activity. South African power utility Eskom has taken business opportunities in the transmission development plan to small, medium and micro enterprises. It has urged them to take advantage of opportunities in battery and solar photovoltaics, among others. The power utility hosted a 2-day Gauteng province leg of its Business Connect. The event has brought together officials from local government and the Industrial Development Corporation to engage emerging entrepreneurs on partnerships and other opportunities. Mashudu Mdwambi is with Eskom Testing and Research Development.
Just to name a few projects that may be exciting is the ash utilization, where we're looking at using this ash for making bricks, the poles, the roads, you name them. They're quite interesting, and we have a lot of people that are in construction. This could be a great opportunity for them to look into this thing, into utilization of ash and all of that. We've proven the concept, and it's up to them to grab the opportunity.
South African manufacturing output decreased by 6.3% year-on-year in April. Declines were recorded across the board, with 9 of the 10 divisions witnessing a slowdown in activity. Food and beverages and metals and machinery divisions were the largest negative contributors. Together, the 2 divisions subtracted 3.2 percentage points from overall manufacturing growth. Nikolai Clausen is the Director of Industry Statistics at Stats SA.
4 divisions contracted by more than 10%. These were electrical machinery, the automotive division, communication and professional equipment, and the miscellaneous category, furniture and manufacturing not elsewhere classified. Glass and non-metallic mineral products was the only division that recorded positive growth, expanding by 2.3% year-on-year. On a month-on-month basis, seasonally adjusted manufacturing production increased by 1.9% in April 2025 compared with March 2025.
Wall Street's main indexes were mixed on Tuesday as investors awaited the outcome of the ongoing trade talks between the US and China aimed at cooling a tariff dispute that has bruised global markets this year. US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said the trade talks with China were going well as officials from the two sides met for a second day in London. Investors are hoping for an improvement in ties after the relief around a preliminary deal struck last month that gave way to a fresh doubts when Washington accused Beijing of blocking exports critical to sectors such as aerospace, semiconductors and defense. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 450, Botswana 13 pula 21, Kenya 128 shilling 417, and Zambia 25 kwacha. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar there will cost you 5 ruble 56, Russia 78 rubles 63, India 85 rupees 59, China 71 18, and in South Africa the dollar will cost you 17 rand 71 cents. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 87 to the euro. Commodities markets: gold $3,338, platinum $1,221 per ounce, Brent crude oil $66.71 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Thabisolo Hogo.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
All right, time for our G20 fact for this Wednesday, the 11th of June. Did you know that the G20 was upgraded to the level of heads of state in the wake of the global economic and financial crisis of 2007 and in 2009, when it became apparent that the necessary crisis coordination would only be possible at the highest political level? Since then, the G20 leaders have met regularly, and the G20 has become the premier forum for international economic cooperation. That's our G20 fact for this morning.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
44 minutes past 6 Central African time. Good morning and welcome to Africa Rise and Shine. If you've just joined us, please do get in touch with us on our social media platforms. Our handles are at Channel Africa 1 across those different platforms. Let's get to the story now, staying with where we are broadcasting live from South Africa. The country and the African continent are gearing up for the Africa Green Hydrogen Summit, which will be held in Cape Town, South Africa this week. The event was preceded by the media launch held on Tuesday in Johannesburg, attended by South Africa's Minister of Electricity and Energy, Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa. The organizers say the event aligns with Africa's green industrialization and sustainability goals. Sisi Sekhalo has more on this story.
It's also expected to showcase the continent's potential as a global leader in green hydrogen production, unlocking investment opportunities and strategic partnerships. Relevant stakeholders in the sector, including government officials, energy ministers, international investors and energy experts, as well as industry leaders and policymakers, are also part of those expected. It is also a key G20-aligned event. The media launch in Johannesburg was attended by Minister of Energy and Electricity in South Africa, Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa. He says green hydrogen is crucial for his country.
It's going to help us to transition what we call the hard-to-abate sectors, aviation and maritime. If you look at the amount of emissions, electricity is at the top, then it's transportation. There's very little with the current solution that we can apply on the transportation side, except that green hydrogen is going to give us that opportunity. What we need to resolve is the cost element. It's still cost prohibitive. It comes at a premium, but with the development of technology, I think that in a year, 18 months, we'll be in the right place. We have all the ingredients, if you like, the factors of production here. We can come in competitive, and it helps us to diversify our energy sources, to be able to build new skills, but also to beneficiate our mineral endowments and increase, if you like, a mining share of GDP.
The launch also showcased the work of Asanda Precious Metals, a company based in Johannesburg, South Africa. A mini tour was made to the company's laboratories and state-of-the-art technology. The Chief Executive Officer of the company, Vinay Somera, briefly explains what green hydrogen is and the work that they do.
Green hydrogen essentially is water that has been split up into hydrogen and oxygen using something called an electrolyzer. An electrolyzer uses platinum and iridium that's made into catalyst, and that's coated onto a membrane to form a catalyst-coated membrane, which is essentially a single cell of an electrolyzer. So that's what we as Asanda Precious Metals will be producing here at our facility. And then once you have the green hydrogen, to convert it back into electricity, you need a fuel cell. A fuel cell uses platinum catalyst or platinum ruthenium catalyst coated onto membranes to produce a membrane electrode assembly, which is a single cell of a fuel cell. And again, we'll produce the catalyst and the MEA here at our facility.
He further explains why green hydrogen is important and its usage.
So if you want to decarbonize this world, renewable energy is really the major way of decarbonizing the atmosphere. So renewable energy needs to be stored, and you can store it in batteries or you can store it in hydrogen. Hydrogen is a better storage mechanism because you can store energy in hydrogen over seasons. It doesn't degrade, and then you can liberate it via chemical processes back into energy. So over the longer term, for very, very large quantities, we believe hydrogen is still the superior storage mechanism.
For Channel Africa, I'm Sisi Sekhalo in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, it's been a year since Amnesty International sounded the alarm over the Nigerian government's failure to support girls and young women who'd escaped the clutches of Boko Haram in the northeast of the country. So many of these survivors, abducted, raped and forced into marriages or combat roles, have returned to society only to face a new form of abandonment. According to a recent follow-up by Amnesty International, not a single survivor has received any adequate trauma counseling, vocational training, targeted reintegration services, and many sadly remain unemployed, stigmatized, and psychologically scarred without the support and the urgent need with help in terms of rebuilding their lives. Well, to unpack the situation and really what should be happening next, we're now joined by Issa Sanusi, who's the country director at Amnesty International Nigeria. Thank you so much indeed for joining us and welcome to the program.
Thank you, Peter, for having me this morning.
So, Mr. Sanusi, take us back a little bit. What prompted Amnesty International to release this follow-up report 1 year later? What have you seen in the ground in the interim? Hello, Mr. Sanusi, are you there?
Yeah, I can hear you now. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you now. I was just saying, what prompted Amnesty International to release this follow-up report 1 year later? What have you been seeing on the ground?
Well, we normally when we do research, we also do a follow-up. And this time we did that follow-up and we realized that Nigerian government was not able to take any action despite the research we produced last year and despite the fact that we presented them with adequate information, adequate details, adequate data to help them, help these girls to revive their lives, to rebuild their lives. Unfortunately, we did what we call a continuous follow-up, which is keeping in touch with the lives of people we interviewed in the course of this research, and we realized that nothing has been done. There was no effort whatsoever
to address the problems highlighted by our report. And that was why we did this follow-up, because we feel that it's very important for the Nigerian government to do something, because the lives of these girls and young women have been shattered by Boko Haram, and they need assistance, they need support. If not, their lives will never come back to normal again.
Tell us a little bit more about the condition of these girls and actually young women today. Are they safe? Tell us the kind of situation they find themselves in without this support that you describe as badly needed.
Well, through our follow-up and constant contact with them, we realize that they are still having trauma as a result of living in the custody of Boko Haram for so many years. They also have the trauma that is from witnessing atrocities committed by Boko Haram. Let us go back to the fact that these girls were in the custody of Boko Haram. Boko Haram abducted them in the first place from their parents, some of them as young as 10, 9, 14. So we realize that they are still living with layers and layers of trauma, and psychosocial care is needed, and it was never there for them. Some of them are also having health challenges because they had children with Boko Haram. Some had as many as 4 children with Boko Haram fighters through sexual slavery. And as a result of that, and because of the fact that they had those children in the camps, in the bush with Boko Haram, they end up with so many health complications that have never been treated up to now. We also realize that some of them have ambition. They want to go back to school. They want to rebuild their lives. Unfortunately, the support is not there at all for them. And that is really some of the things that we discovered. And those are some of the reasons why we feel that a year is a long time enough for the Nigerian government to do something, but they didn't. And we have to remind them that doing something is very important. And the right time to do it is now. And failure to do it will be devastating for the whole society.
What have the authorities said about not doing anything? They made promises. You must have engaged them and said, look, this is the situation on the ground. What did they say to you?
Well, they are not saying anything, actually. And even our effort to engage them more effectively on this has been turned down. Apparently, as usual, the Nigerian authorities doing this kind of things is not a priority for them. And we believe that just because they don't feel it's a priority, we have to continue telling them that they are wrong and they have to do the right thing. We believe that rebuilding the lives of these girls is very important, but we will continue to also engage them because we have been sending them letters asking for meetings. Fortunately for us, international organizations supporting Nigerian government have been more cooperative, more supportive, more interested in the lives of these girls than the Nigerian government. But we will continue to try and engage them and make them realize the mistake they are making by ignoring these girls.
What number are we talking about in terms of girls that are in need and need assistance?
Well, I can't actually say we can't put a number to it, because one thing is that in Nigeria we have data issues, because it's very, very difficult for you to say this is exactly the number of girls, but in some camps you will find as many as hundreds of these girls. And you know, we have so many internally displaced persons camps across only Borno State alone and other parts of northeastern part of Nigeria. So you are talking about thousands in this case, and you are talking about also many other girls who are with their parents. They never go to internally displaced persons camps, therefore they are not registered. So, and some people, because of the stigma attached with being in the custody of Boko Haram, they hardly register their situation so that the government will take cognizance of their existence. Therefore, it's very difficult to put a number to it, but we believe that the number of these girls is so big to the extent that we should all be worried about the fact that nothing has been done about them.
You mentioned stigma, and that was something I wanted to explore as well, because reintegration must be very difficult, particularly in these environments where cultural and religious beliefs are quite high, conservative societies. It must be so hard for these young girls.
Definitely, and that is one of the reasons why we believe that they should not be abandoned. Because let me just give you one example of this kind of situations. Most of these girls have the ambition of rebuilding their lives, and one of the ways they want to do it is to marry again, or to marry for the first time. Unfortunately, that already people are stigmatizing them in the communities and societies they go back to by calling them in court Boko Haram wives. So that is one of the stigmas, and therefore many prospective suitors for them shun them, and people call them, because they are called in court Boko Haram wives, and that is why no any suitor is interested in them, and that is really giving them another round of psychological pain and anguish. And that is why we believe that the government has to take a holistic approach to making sure that these girls come back to normal life, and they rebuild their lives, and all the stigma is addressed through psychosocial care and reorientation. And we believe that this is something that has to be done. Unfortunately, nothing has been done, but we'll continue to work on that and make sure that the right thing is done.
Very briefly, is what's happening to these young women and the failures by the Nigerian government to assist a signal in terms of a broader view that Nigeria has in dealing with gender-based violence in general?
Yes. So one thing that I should have mentioned even from the beginning is that the Nigerian government has a program for rebuilding the lives of young men affected by Boko Haram, but they have no program for rebuilding the lives of young girls and young women affected by Boko Haram. So you can see the gender discrimination clearly here. And we believe that that is one of the reasons why this issue is not being given the right attention.
Mr. Sanusi, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you very much indeed for continuing to tell this very important story, and we hope that the attention that it gets will force the authorities to do something. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for having me this time.
Thank you. That's Issa Sanusi, Director, Amnesty International, Nigeria. Yeah, it's 7 o'clock Central African time. Asanda Beda.
Yes, and very good morning if you've just joined us. Morning, Peter Ndoro. This hour we look at Malawi's President Lazarus Chakwera being faced with a boycott as families of Vice President Solos Chilima and other June 10 plane crash victims snubbed a memorial service at the crash site. We also look at the issue of child labor. According to statistics from the International Labour Organization, the ILO, and UNICEF, nearly 138 million children were engaged in child labor in 2024. We're going to be unpacking that with the Regional Advisor for Child Protection at UNICEF, Eastern and Southern Africa. Lots to come, of course, not just those two stories. Yeah. You can stay tuned for more.
Yeah, but first let's catch you up what's happening in the news. And at the desk this morning, we say good morning to Jualani Tulongwepe, and that'll be followed with headlines with Figile Lingwati. And I hope he's got that Senegal beating England story.
SABC News, the African perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Zambia's late former President Edgar Lungu's body is expected to be repatriated from South Africa today. Lungu died in the country where he was receiving specialized medical care last week. Meanwhile, the acting leader of the Patriotic Front in Zambia, Given Lubinda, has appealed to the nation and its leadership to honor Lungu's final wishes. Speaking at a memorial service in Pretoria, Lubinda says Zambia should uphold the dignity he was denied in life and now in death. Kaeli Kumalo has more.
The acting president of the Patriotic Front, Kevin Lubinda, has lamented how former President Lungu was treated after leaving office. He recalled how his home was once surrounded by police and his gates broken down by officers who once saluted him as head of states. The Zambian diaspora expressed solidarity and agreed that Lungu's legacy must be respected and his memory preserved with dignity and fairness. Meanwhile, the Zambian government has appealed to people to refrain from inflammatory statements and hate speech pertaining to the funeral of the former president, saying this moment calls for unity, love and compassion.
Post-mortem results from the death of the Kenyan blogger who died in police custody show he was hit on the head and his death was likely to have been caused by assault. Albert Ojwang's death has sparked widespread outrage in Kenya, with rights groups demanding that police be held accountable. The 31-year-old was detained following a complaint by the deputy police chief, who accused him of tarnishing his name on social media. An autopsy conducted by 5 pathologists who released a unanimous report revealed that Ojwang had severe head injuries and suffered neck compression and multiple soft tissue trauma. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has announced that a national convention will take place on the 15th of August this year to set the agenda on challenges and opportunities facing the country. The President says the national convention will be representative of the people of South Africa. He says all sectors of society will be given a voice to determine how problems should be addressed and how to build a better country for future generations. Ramaphosa has called on citizens to unite to define a vision for South Africa for the next 30 years.
We are therefore called upon at this moment to direct all our efforts to build a thriving, inclusive economy that creates jobs and opportunities. We are called upon to build safer communities and create a better future for our children. We are also called upon to give all sectors of our society, men and women, young and old, persons with disabilities, the LGBTQI community, and urban and rural people a voice. It is an opportunity to forge a new social compact for the development of our country for different stakeholders: government, business, labor, civil society, men and women, communities, and citizens.
The United States is promoting a deal that would require Rwanda to pull troops from eastern Congo before the two sides sign a peace agreement. The U.S. President Donald Trump's administration is hoping talks will end fighting in eastern Congo and bring billions of dollars of Western investment to the region. Elizabeth Mapari has the details.
In May, Washington wanted a peace agreement finalized within about 2 months, an ambitious timeline for resolving a conflict with roots in the Rwandan genocide more than 3 decades ago. A draft peace agreement seen by Reuters as a condition for signature is that Rwanda withdraws troops, weapons and equipment from Congo. The authenticity of the document, which is undated, was confirmed by 4 diplomatic sources who said it was written by U.S. officials. Analysts and diplomats have reported that Rwanda has sent between 7,000 and 12,000 soldiers to eastern Congo to support M23 rebels.
And finally, a U.S. judge has denied an emergency request from California Governor Gavin Newsom to block the use of troops into Los Angeles to quell protests on immigration raids. Newsom says the move is illegal. Trump has called the protests a full-blown assault on public order. LA Mayor Karen Bass has now announced an overnight curfew in the city centre. The BBC's Peter Bowes has the story.
Newsom argued that California's state sovereignty was being illegally infringed upon and that the Department of Defense had expanded the National Guard's power to include arresting and detaining immigrants, which the state believed was a direct violation of the US Constitution. The court hearing has been set for Thursday, giving the Trump administration time to respond to it.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Cholani Tulo-Wembe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In a sports headline, Bafana coach Hugo Broos says choosing a 23-player squad for World Cup qualifiers in September will be difficult. And the Rwanda national sitting volleyball team has commenced preparation for the upcoming Africa Sitting Volleyball Championship in Kenya. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Beda Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Now, in Malawi, a memorial service at the site of Monday's tragic plane crash was overshadowed by a boycott from the families of the victims, including that of Vice President Solus Chilima. The families insist that the service should have taken place at the burial sites. President Lazarus Chakwera, who led the ceremony, said that families were free to grieve in their own way. Government has also announced plans to erect a monument at the crash site. George Muhango reports from Blantyre.
The president will now proceed to the saluting ties.
What remains surprising to many Malawians is that during the memorial service, families of the victims who perished in the Chikangawa forest plane crash in northern Malawi decided not to attend the official memorial function which the government held. The event, graced by President Lazarus Chakwera at the plane crash site, was expected to draw widespread participation, but it was clear that those most affected by the tragedy distanced themselves from it. Chakwera expressed concern that misconception continues to surround the accident, although the German Federal Bureau of Investigators, BFU, final report attributed the cause of the accident to collision with terrain following bad weather. At the presidential event, Minister of Local Government, Richard Chimwendo Banda, announced that a monument at the site is in service for all the departed ones, including the late Vice President Solus Chilima.
To create a landmark that encourages reflection on the tragic events of 10th June 2024. And second is to honor Solus Klaus Chilima and 8 others' contribution to Malawi's political and economical growth of this country. Third, Your Excellencies, to inspire future leaders and citizens on good governance, patriotism, and selflessness. And lastly, to act as a reminder to duty bearers, put in place emergency and disaster response mechanism.
This did not amuse those who gathered at the burial site of the late Chilima. The grieving families who chose to be part of the memorial gathering in Nsipe believed the atmosphere better reflected their sorrow and remembrance. Former President Joyce Banda and other opposition political party leaders also boycotted the presidential program and joined the commemorative service in the home village of the late Chilima. Support for the Nsipe event from families, opposition figures, and artists painted a message that many Malawians were seeking authenticity over formality in the face of the national grief. Simeon Salambula, a political friend of the late Chilima, spoke at the event in Nsipe, Nchewu district.
His untimely death in a tragic plane crash that took us to our core, but his legacy lives on in the body he founded and the values he instilled in each one of us.
Government's Chikangawa function, once seen as a vital time of national mourning, stood overshadowed by a parallel event that seemed to have captured the nation's true sentiment. Furthermore, at the Nsipe gathering, opposition political parties did not only show their presence, but were allowed to speak, a gesture that many described as inclusive and respectful. Some human rights observers viewed this as a political statement, as it highlighted growing dissatisfaction with how the government handled the tragedy and the official program surrounding it. Despite the final report blaming the accident on bad weather and poor timing by military officials, many Malawians think the government could have done better in handling the accident and the memorial event on June 10, 2025.
And you know what you are doing. We cannot be here for nothing. We cannot be here
George Mhango, Channel Africa News, Blantyre, Malawi.
June is Youth Month in South Africa. Celebrate Africa's young voices with us. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Nearly 138 million children were engaged in child labor in 2024, including around 54 million in hazardous work likely to jeopardize their health, safety, or development, according to new estimates released by the International Labour Organization, or the ILO, and UNICEF. The latest data shows a total reduction of over 20 million children since 2020, reversing an alarming spike between 2016 and 2020. Despite this positive trend, the world has missed its target of eliminating child labor by 2025. The report, titled Child Labor, Global Estimates 2024 Trends and the Road Forward, released one day ahead of the World Day Against Child Labor and on International Day of Play, underscores a stark reality that millions of children are still being denied their right to learn, play, and simply be children. To discuss this, we are joined on the line by Nankali Maksud, who is Regional Advisor for Child Protection at UNICEF Eastern and Southern Africa. Nankali, thank you for joining us and welcome to Rise and Shine.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk to you.
Our pleasure. What is the actual definition of child labor? Let's start there. And until what age can an individual be classified as falling under it?
So child labor is any form of work. We have domestic work. We've got work that children are doing in farms. In fact, that's the majority. And being children, that goes all the way to 18 years of age.
All right. So those are some of the examples and types that you've given us. Farm workers and domestic work.
Yes, these are some of the examples. But of course, there are some which are even more, hazardous. We have children who are working in mines. So there's a whole range that's classified as child labor for children. And it goes all the way through to 18. We don't want children to be working. We want them to be in schools.
Children stationed at traffic lights begging for money or asking for money, as well as some children that you see at shopping malls asking for raffle ticket money, can that be seen as a part of child labor as examples?
Indeed, that's also a form of child labor. The reason why we're seeing children, whether it's in the field, whether it's in streets, whether it's in shopping malls, is coming back to the issue that poverty is hitting a lot of the families where children live, and they're looking for ways to be able to survive either out of their own agency or driven by parents in their households. Yeah. And that's something that we really need to get to the bottom of.
Yeah. What are some of the main reasons that children end up engaging in child labor?
So, as I said, the first one, of course, for us is poverty. The levels of poverty just remain to be really, really high. And while for us who are living in many of the cities, we're seeing children on the streets, we're seeing them in malls, the majority of children who are affected by this are actually in rural areas and coming from poor households. So this is the where you face the highest prevalence rate. But indeed, in Africa, and of course, as a global world today, we're seeing this taking place in all type of settings. Children are working and are not in school as they should be.
As you say, it's in all types of settings. Is there a specific gender that the report has found is higher when it comes to child labor? Are there specific children from certain countries that are higher rating?
So, first of all, I wouldn't say it's children in certain countries, but for us coming from this African continent, sub-Saharan Africa continues to have the highest number of children who are working. If you look at the prevalence rate over the last, let's say 5 or so years, the prevalence rate has gone down. But our issue is that we have a huge population and children continue to be born. And so because of the numbers, that's why we continue to have very high numbers within sub-Saharan Africa, where, we're estimated at 87 million. And this child labor is not only, happening perhaps, most of the time people think older children. We're also seeing younger children between the ages of 5 to 11 who are also affected. In terms of the gender issue, I'm really glad that you've raised that. Indeed, we used to feel that girls are more affected because we see them, especially in domestic labor or in care within their households. But we realized from this report that both boys and girls are affected. boys more so in paid labor and girls more so in the home. They're the ones who are providing the care. They're the ones who are, kind of taking care of the elderly. They're the ones who are doing the domestic chores. So it has a gendered angle to it in terms of the type of work, but both boys and girls are affected by child labor.
So what are the implications for a child in terms of their well-being who is engaged in child labor?
So for children, and it's not only of course it starts with a child's life. What we see about children, what we know about the development, that for children to be able to grow up as productive citizens is that they need to be able to go to school, they need to be able to play. So there's something that we're robbing children out of their lives just being a child on a day-to-day. But in addition to that, if a child doesn't go to school, it also means that they grow up into an adult who perhaps will not have the job opportunities that we would expect them to be able to have. And so it puts that family in a cycle of poverty. They will not be able to rise above that because the child has not been able to go to school. They will not be able to have certain employment opportunities as they grow up. So it's a whole cycle for them when they're a child and when they grow up into being an adult. And the repercussions are not just for that particular child, but for communities and countries at large.
So what are the sectors that are notorious for employing child laborers? You mentioned agriculture, you mentioned domestic work. Is that all? I think we've seen, when we look in the media also in terms of imaging, but not from Africa, from Asian countries where it's manufacturing as well. How prevalent is manufacturing on our side of the world?
So we don't have as much children in manufacturing for Africa, but what we have is a lot of children in mining and in construction as well. Agriculture remains the first one. 70% of child laborers are working in agriculture and mainly in family farms. That's where you're seeing most of the children who are working today. That's followed by domestic work. And then for us as a continent, it's in mining and in construction as well. And so that's something that we need to be able to look out for with those industries as we engage in them. Indeed, there's a farming issue, but there's a big issue around kind of the mining industry and the construction industry that we need to engage and address. And this all starts with addressing that poverty at household level.
Yeah, and as we say, latest data shows a reduction of over 20 million children since 2020. There is a reverse in a previous spike there. So some progress has been made in tackling this issue. But what does legislation provide for when it comes to this issue? If as a parent, I'm suspecting that a child is being forced into labor, what can I do? Where do I go?
So, as a parent,
just as an adult.
Yeah. Just as an adult, for me, I think first things first is that we shouldn't assume the worst about families who make choices for their children to go to work. The issue that they're trying to address is poverty. So the first thing that all of us need to be able to address is what's going on in that family. How can we ensure that we have programs which are able to address poverty at household level? How can we ensure that we have schools that are free, that are quality, that are near these children, so they can be able to go to school? If you ensure that we have those options, families will not make a choice. I'm a mother. I don't know if you're a mother, but I would not choose for my daughter to be walking around on the street if I had that option of ensuring that we have the right income level in our household and that I can be able to take my child to the right school. And I feel that it's going to lead to something in her life. And for me as a mom, that I have an opportunity for a job. If I don't have that, then I start to look for coping mechanisms. How will I survive? How will I feed my children? And that's what leads families down this track. And so if we start to think about it in that way and give families those options, child labor will be taken away from our communities.
And we need to do that. So let's continue with that trajectory that's positive so that there is that positive trend. And we get to, I guess we've missed the target of 2025, but we get to there as quickly as we possibly can. Thank you so much for your time, Nankali. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Great. Nankali Maksud is Regional Advisor for Child Protection at UNICEF, Eastern and Southern Africa.
África. Conhece o Ntivani?
Claro que sou eu.
Ntivani é o amante da música de corpo e alma.
Eu amo música africana.
Ele aprecia todos os tipos de melodias e passa os seus dias a ouvir a Channel África. Adivinha só, a Channel África quer ajudar o Ntivani e os amantes da música em todo o lado a descobrir ainda mais música incrível. Por isso, a Channel África está a convocar artistas africanos a submeterem as suas músicas. músicos. Lembrem-se de nos dar todas as informações relevantes no music@channelafrica.co.za. As submissões são a vossa oportunidade de ser ouvidos, mas não garantem inclusão na lista. Todas as submissões serão cuidadosamente analisadas para verificar se cumprem os requisitos da nossa estação. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Zilipendwa
na Abedi de la Croix.
Kwa nini wanamuziki wengi sana wa kizazi kipya hawafiki mbali pale wanapofanya muziki?
Ni kwa sababu kitu cha kwanza ambacho naweza nikaongelea nikagusia zaidi sana ni kusema kuwa wale wasanii wanapotoa ngoma yao ya kwanza ikiwa kama kahiti kidogo tu, wanaanza kutamba mitaani, wanaonekana kama wapo majuu zaidi sana.
Kuna wanamuziki wengine ambao wanakimbilia kwa waganga wa jadi. Hivi muziki na dawa vinaendana?
Kitu cha kwanza naweza nikasema ni kuwa muziki na dawa haviendani. Lakini muziki ni kipaji.
Kuna watu wengine wanashutumu wasanii wengine kwamba wanaroga.
Wanaroga, wale wasanii kama wanaroga ni kutokujiamini tu. Lakini kitu cha muhimu sana ni kipaji.
Zilipendwa kila Jumamosi kuanzia saa 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati hadi saa 1 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
So it being halfway through the year, which we're all just like shocked because the year started 3 weeks ago, but we're now in June. We're already throwing forward to December and what could happen in December in terms of holiday time. I don't know about you, as our listeners, maybe you can get in touch with us at Channel Africa 1 to tell us if you're starting to plan your December holidays. I mean, we just started the year.
No, it's scary.
We're in June now.
Man.
It's one of those things you just have to be realistic about, that you need to start planning.
I still have to look at my New Year's resolutions.
Do you still do those?
I do. Do you know what? I think it's just almost a ritual more than anything else. I don't think we seriously. I mean, some people are. They're quite determined, but for me.
Let's do a mid-year one. We said we're going to start gym.
Yes.
Let's do a mid-year resolution.
Okay.
We'll start in July.
All right, 100%. I'm with you. And we're going to test each other on this one. So today in history, quite a few things actually happened. On June the 11th, 1971, Egyptian President Anwar Sadat consolidated his power by purging the government of members loyal to his predecessor Gamal Abdel Nasser. Now, this included the arrest of Vice President Ali Sabri and several top officials, and the move marked a turning point in Sadat's leadership and eventually led to the Infitah, economic liberalization policies and a shift away from Soviet influence. So a coup essentially in Egypt's leadership there taking place. And then in 1982, South African troops invaded Angola. Yeah, there was this phobia that South Africa had about communist countries, communist-supported nations. And on this day, South African Defence Forces conducted cross-border operations into southern Angola, targeting SWAPO, that's the Southwest Africa People's Organization's basis. And this was part of a broader South African border war tied to Namibia's independence struggle and Cold War. And so, of course, when Russia, the Iron Curtain, as it was known, eventually fell, that was the beginning of the end of the South African story. But fast forward to 2025. South Africa's National Planning Commission has flagged urgent concerns over the deepening vulnerabilities of youth, women and marginalized communities. Nearly 5 decades since the Soweto uprising and a decade after #Fees Must Fall. In its latest quarterly meeting, the Commission raised some red flags over the lack of adequate student funding, the silent structural violence in national policies, the persistent crisis of gender-based violence, and the slow pace of inclusive economic reform. The NPC has also endorsed new advisory notes to the government on cutting red tape for small to medium enterprises, SMMEs, accelerating agricultural reforms and fixing broken service delivery systems. Well, to explore some of these developments and what they mean for South Africa's long-term Vision 2030, we're now joined by one of the commissioners of the National Planning Commission, Commissioner Pearl Pillay. Thank you so much indeed for joining us and welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. Good morning to you listeners.
It's good to talk to you. We sometimes forget actually that there is this body like yours with working with this big plan for our country. Take us through, especially for our listeners who don't quite know what the National Planning Commission does and what the vision is for the country.
So, for those who don't know, the National Development Plan is South Africa's development vision for the year 2030. So, the plan was drafted in 2012 under the first National Planning Commission. And it sets out South Africa's roadmap, basically, for our country's future development. The aim of the NDP is to eliminate poverty and reduce inequality by 2030. And the plan obviously sets across various chapters on how we achieve the various development goals. But it's all centered around eliminating poverty, reducing inequality, and resolving unemployment.
All right, so a plan is a blueprint, a map going forward. But sadly, we've been struggling in a number of areas. Education, for example, 49 years after the Soweto uprising and a decade after fees must fall, there's still a funding gap for the missing middle, as we've described them. Why is this still unresolved, do you think, from what you've seen?
So I think we have multiple reasons why this remains unresolved. The one is that we have a very precarious middle class in South Africa. So often what it means to be middle class changes depending on where the economy is sitting at, right? What might have considered you middle class 10 years ago might just not cut it today. And so what happens is it's difficult to do a means test for such a precarious kind of class lines. And what often happens, and when you look at the funding models available, so you've got something like NSFAS that has been a very sort of rigid system that has had clear criteria rather for who gets to qualify for the program. When those things don't change according to what is the kind of economic position of society, then you end up with a growing gap of missing middle students. And so because these kind of size of our classes and the way society is organized continues to change, yet we have a funding system that doesn't adapt to those changes, we kind of have this growing bulge.
The Commission also flagged violence against women and children and spoke of something you describe as structural violence within national policies. Unpack that for us. What does that mean?
So one of the things we do at our plenary meetings is we offer reflections on the state of the country and on what are the most pressing issues that need attention. And in our recent plenary, we spoke at large, in fact, again, about GBV and violence against women. And, you know, the Commission noted with a lot of concern that there seems to be ongoing issues, both societal and structural, right, that contribute to the problem. For us, when we think about structural violence and the structural issues that need to be fixed, we think about the Public Protector's report that looked at the ability of the state to provide justice for gender-based violence. So one of the things that we are in support of at the Planning Commission is to be able to carry out the recommendations by the Public Protector around the systemic investigation into administrative deficiencies. So what we find structurally is that we have a justice system that is very difficult for victims to navigate. When you go to a police station to obtain a protection order, for example, you often struggle because you firstly have to face the kind of socio-cultural issues around reporting violence, but in a lot of cases, police stations and then by extension courts are not adequately resourced to provide the right kind of support to victims. Basic things like shelters, translation services, a safe room for victims to be able to come forward about what's happening to them. A lot of our courts actually don't have that, and a lot of our police stations are not well equipped. And so the public protector has a report that has been released that provides remedial actions to be able to address some of these issues, and we are in support of that.
We're running out of time, but it is Youth Month, and our population is by and large young. So youth participation, how do we move from symbolic gestures to real inclusion of young people in planning and policy implementation, especially with this Vision 2030?
Oh, it's a conversation that really has plagued us for a long time. I think there are a few things. The one is kind of a reimagining for how we see young people. And this extends to obviously other cross-cutting issues like disability and like gender, but since it is Youth Month, we often look at young people and we see them as sort of an afterthought to what inclusion means, right? You host a conference and the last thing you think about is, oh, we need some young people in the room. One of the things we've been working on at the NPC for this NDP as well as the next one is how do you mainstream youth as an integral part of everything that you do, right? How do all of our policy interventions, because every bit of policy affects young people as the majority of this country. And so how do we actively and intentionally mainstream young people in our policy visions, but also how do we include more young people in policy work? So for example, at the Planning Commission, we have 3 commissioners that we often refer to as the young people in the commission out of a commission of 26. And so those are some of the things that you need to address when it comes to tokenism, is thinking about what are the spaces that are meaningful and impactful when it comes to policy development, and how do you bring young people as part and parcel of the work that needs to get done, not just in June and not just as, the kind of random add-ons whenever you're doing work.
Pearl, we're going to have to leave it there, sadly, but a promise I'm going to make is I'm going to get hold of you again and have a much longer conversation, because I think this is such an important issue. So with your indulgence, I hope that we can call on you, in fact, later today, to have another conversation with you. Thanks so much for joining us this morning, though, for this quite a brief talk.
Thank you so much. Stay warm.
Thank you. That's Pearl Pillay, one of the commissioners of South Africa's National Planning Commission, talking to us about various issues. Vision 2030, but it's Youth Month, so that's one big pillar that they need to address. And what we need to address now are your news headlines. Here's Jwalani Tulongwepe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Making headlines, Zambia's late former President Edgar Lungu's body is expected to be repatriated from South Africa today. Lungu died in the country where he was receiving specialized medical care last week. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has announced that a national convention will take place on the 15th of August this year to set the agenda on challenges and opportunities facing the country. And the US has condemned the sanctions that several Western allied governments have imposed on 2 Israeli cabinet ministers for inciting violence in the West Bank. I will have details on these and other stories at 8 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Now, let's find out what's happening in the world of sports with Fikile Lingwati. Good morning again, sir.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
We start off with football news. Bafana coach Hugo Broos says choosing a 23-player squad for World Cup qualifiers in September will be difficult as he has a large pool of players to choose from. He was speaking after a 2-0 win over Mozambique in a friendly encounter played at Peter Mokaba Stadium in Polokwane, Limpopo Province last night. The victory came after they played a goalless draw against Tanzania last Friday. The new look Bafana Bafana team that consists of young players has pleased coach Bruce after beating Mozambique by 2-0. Sinokolo Kwaiya and Ashley Cupido netted the 2 goals in the second half of the match. Bruce says he has plenty of players to choose from to form a squad.
Everything is positive, and this is something that will make my job very difficult in the next months. We have 23 players there. You know that there are still maybe also 23 who are with their club, still with their club, or who are at home. So that makes that you can choose now in between 40 players. Of this will be difficult because you have to drop players in September. Players maybe who deserved it, but okay, I have to make choices.
Bruce says now is the time for transition to replace older players with younger ones.
The selection of March, I think there were 12 or 13 players around 30 and over. It's time to start and little by little to get the team younger. We have to drop than others, but I've never been afraid to drop players. We will do it now also and try to do it now also, even when there are important games for World Cup qualifiers.
And in rugby news, the Junior Springbok squad announced of the World Cup Under-20 Championship. Lyle Norton will retain his captaincy for the World Rugby Under-20 Championship in Italy under Junior Springbok head coach Kevin Foote, who has confirmed his squad. Piwa Wenkosi Gupega is at prop. Ian van der Merwe fly half have not played for the SA Under-20s before, while Jaco Grobbelaar, lock, Stephanus Linde number 8 and Jacob Williams outside back are back in the squad after missing the recent Under-20 Rugby Championship in Gqeberha. And in volleyball news, the Rwanda national sitting volleyball team has commenced preparations for the upcoming Africa Sitting Volleyball Championship set to take place at the Moi International Sports Center, Kasarani, in Nairobi, Kenya, from the 14th to the 9th of July. Head coach Mossad Eluati confirmed that training is already underway with players grouped to work on fitness and technical skills. For any sports stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Zilipendwa na Abedi Jean de la Croix.
Kwa nini wanamuziki wengi sana wa kizazi kipya hawafiki mbali pale wanapofanya muziki?
Ni kwa sababu kitu cha kwanza ambacho naweza nikaongelea nikagusia zaidi sana ni kusema kuwa wale wasanii wanapotoa ngoma yao ya kwanza ikiwa kama kahiti kidogo tu, wanaanza kutamba mitaani, wanaonekana kama wapo majuu zaidi sana.
Kuna wanamuziki wengine ambao wanakimbilia kwa waganga wa jadi. Hivi muziki na dawa vinaendana?
Kitu cha kwanza naweza nikasema ni kuwa muziki na dawa haviendani. Lakini muziki ni kipaji.
Kuna watu wengine wanashutumu wasanii wengine kwamba wanaroga.
Wanaroga, wale wasanii kama wanaroga ni kutokujiamini tu. Lakini kitu cha muhimu sana ni kipaji.
Zilipendwa kila Jumamosi kuanzia saa 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati hadi saa 1 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Right, so let's catch you up now with what's been happening in business. And sitting at the business news desk this morning is Tabiso Lihuko. Good morning, Tabiso.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Good morning. South Africa's Basic Education Minister, Siviwe Gwahube, says the Government of National Unity has a mammoth task of ensuring that more job opportunities are created for the country's youth. She says it is heartbreaking that many young graduates are still unemployed. Gwahube was a part of President Cyril Ramaphosa's engagement with the beneficiaries of the Presidential Youth Programme in Pretoria.
It's heartbreaking, and that is the reality of our unemployment crisis in South Africa. There are people who are educated, who find themselves applying just to be education assistants. And it's heartbreaking because those people should be in full-time employment. And so we celebrate this opportunity for young people to be able to be upskilled and in places of work for 6 months.
South Africa's retail banking sector is continuing the trend of downsizing and scaling back its physical presence in the country as clients turn to digital options. An assessment of all banking branches at full year 2024 shows that the country has seen the net closure of 9 branches among the top 5 legacy banks, with the Standard Bank narrowing its footprint the most. Channel Africa business reporter Innocent Simosa has more.
The numbers reflect data as of February 2025. According to the assessment, the number of branches across the banks dropped from 3,299 branches in December 2023 to 3,990 branches in December 2024.
Independent economist Tsepo Khadima says Botswana's current government has failed to define the country's macroeconomic policy trajectory and ensure that the economy is diversified. Botswana's economy mainly depends on its garment industry. Khadima's comment comes as the World Bank's Macro Poverty Outlook 2025 has shown that Botswana may breach its debt ceiling unless fiscal deficits are reduced. The government of Botswana recently acquired 2 loans from the African Development Bank and the Botswana Public Officers Pension Fund amounting to $532 million. Khadima explains.
Things are going to look a lot more bleaker because these institutions tend to restrict the borrowers, such as the country of Botswana. And one is surprised as to why Botswana did not tap into the private capital through the bond market largely, because that would have given them some latitude in terms of how to diversify the economy. So right now I can't see them being able to diversify the economy.
Zimbabwe's Minister of Mines, Winston Chitando, will ban the export of lithium concentrates from 2027 as it extends its push for more local processing. Africa's top producer of lithium used in batteries to power renewable energy technologies banned the export of lithium in 2022 and has been pushing miners to process more domestically. Lithium miners in Zimbabwe, who are mostly from China, have been exporting concentrates to their home country. Share markets and the dollar offered a guarded welcome to the latest signs of progress in US-China trade talks while awaiting more detail of what was decided and whether it would stick for long. Bond investors were also hunkered down for a reading in US inflation that could show the early impact of tariffs on prices and a treasury auction that will test demand for the debt. Over in London, negotiators from Washington and Beijing say they had agreed on a framework on trade that would be taken back to their leaders. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 450, Botswana 13.21, Kenya 128 shilling 417, and Zambia it's a 25 kwacha. The BRICS countries, the dollar in Brazil is trading at 5.56, Russia 78 rubles 63, India 85 rupees 59, China 71.18, and in South Africa the dollar will cost you 17 rand 71 cents. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 87 to the euro. Gold $3,338, platinum $1,221 per ounce, Brent crude oil $66.71 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can give us a call on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabisolo Hoku.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
44 minutes past 7 Central African time. It is. Let's get into another economic story as we come from Tabiso Lehoku there with our business update. So South Africa's retail banking sector is continuing the trend of downsizing and scaling back their physical presence in the country as clients turn to digital options. An assessment of all banking branches at full year 2024 shows that the country has seen the net closure of 9 branches among the top 5 legacy banks, with Standard Bank narrowing its footprint the most. Even in cases where branch closures are not as prominent, the banks have also moved to shrink their points of presence, reducing the square meterage of operations where possible. Channel Africa business reporter Innocent Samusa has more.
Data from FirstRand's interim results reflects branch numbers as of the end of December 2024 for Standard Bank, Absa, Nedbank, except Capitec Bank. The numbers reflect data as of February 2025. According to the assessment, the number of branches across the banks dropped from 3,299 branches in December 2023 to 3,990 branches in December 2024. As banks scale down their physical presence and accelerate digital migration, what new cybersecurity vulnerabilities emerge in South Africa's retail banking sector, and how can legacy banks adequately prepare to address them? Cybersecurity analyst Luvian Pierce weighs in.
Regarding new vulnerabilities and whether legacy banks are able and ready to address them, I do think that there are new methods of attack that are going to prove very challenging for banks. And the particular focus for me, or concern for me, is the use of artificial intelligence by hackers and malefactors and fraudsters to try to dupe banks and their clients into giving away their money and being defrauded of their savings. In this regard, I think that deep fakes are going to be a particular problem.
With the reduction in physical branches, more customers are relying on mobile and online banking platforms. Luvian shares some of the biggest cybersecurity threats facing these digital channels and ways that banks can enhance protection without compromising user experience.
My view is that this is going to be an even bigger problem for the retail banks in the short term. The reason I say so is because with advances in various types of technology, and I've mentioned artificial intelligence, the ordinary consumer is likely to be duped and to be deceived more easily if such types of technology are used. My main concern is the more older population who may not be familiar or as familiar with the different types of fraud methods that fraudsters are using nowadays.
He says South Africa's top banks should invest enough in cybersecurity infrastructure and talent to match their digital ambitions.
I do think that we've seen banks starting to take this aspect of their business very seriously, and we've seen huge amounts being spent on upgrades to IT infrastructure and on the security aspects of their infrastructure. So I do think that banks are taking it seriously. What we've also seen is that banks are attempting to protect themselves more by having very, very strict terms and conditions that govern how their customers interact with them on digital platforms. These terms and conditions, to a certain extent, for some banks, are extremely one-sided.
No doubt, this is coming with a lot of job cuts. Our attempt to get comment from the South African Society of Bank Officials Union was indeed unsuccessful. For Channel Africa News, I am Innocent Samos in Johannesburg.
South Africa's Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, Gayton McKenzie, has reaffirmed the government's commitment to justice, dignity and historical redress through the repatriation of ancestral and exile remains. Speaking at a media briefing, Minister McKenzie announced the second phase of the country's 5-year exile repatriation program, which includes urgent missions to Angola, Lesotho, Zambia and Zimbabwe. Channel Africa's Michael Mbewe picks up the story for us.
These initiatives, developed in collaboration with the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development and the Department of Military Veterans and Defense, focuses on addressing historical injustices by repatriating the remains of indigenous Khoi and San ancestors, as well as South Africans who died in exile during the anti-apartheid liberation struggle. Minister McKenzie said planned technical missions to Angola, Lesotho, Zambia and Zimbabwe aimed at locating and documenting grave sites of South African exiles who passed away abroad will be undertaken while making a heartfelt public appeal to families, former comrades and communities to come forward with any information.
As part of the second phase of our 5-year repatriation program, launched in September 2024, a joint delegation of the people in the room will travel to Angola, Lesotho, Zambia, Zimbabwe. The mission will include inspection of cemetery records, grave mapping, historical and archival research. Most importantly, a call to the public is being made. We urge former exiles, comrades and families to assist us. If you have names, photos, dates or locations, no matter how small, please come forward. You can submit this information via the online form at www.sara.org.za.
In September last year, South Africa witnessed the return of the remains of over 40 liberation fighters who were buried in Zimbabwe and Zambia. McKenzie says the second phase is a continuation from last year.
The Exile Repatriation Project Phase 2. As you know, last year we brought back Duma Nokwe, Bethel February, Memu Posho, Tot Machikitsa. We brought back 45 of our heroes. And that program is continuing with the instruction from the government that it should be sped up. Thousands of our people went into exile during the liberation struggle. Many never came home. Some died unknown, buried in unmarked graves, without their families having the chance to mourn. Why does this matter? The Exile Repatriation Project is about bringing our freedom fighters home.
In an emotional address, Minister McKenzie recalled the painful trauma and suffering that these ancestors went through. About 58 of Khoisan remains are set for burial.
These ancestors were treated like objects and as objects. They were displayed in museums, studied in labs, and held in foreign institutions without consent or respect. We are correcting those injustices now. Key actions that we will be taking as the Government of National Unity, that we will have the reburial of 58 ancestral remains originating from the Northern Cape. This is being done in full consultation with the communities concerned. What this reburial truly means, it is not just about returning the remains to the soil, it is about restoring dignity, it's about fulfilling cultural and spiritual obligations, it's about healing the deep wounds of dispossession and, most importantly, historical erasure.
He also called for greater cooperation between stakeholders, nationally and internationally.
International cooperation. We are in active talks with the Hunterian Museum at the University of Glasgow to return more Khoi and San remains. Our people are all over the world, and this government is caring enough to say, go get the remains of our people. We call on all institutions, both here and abroad, to engage in honest and active-driven processes of restitution and repatriation.
South Africa's National Prosecuting Authority, NPA, is also playing a critical role through its Missing Persons Department. Madeleine Follard is a member of the NPA task team.
As the Missing Persons Task Team, we were set up to work on tracing the fate and whereabouts of people who disappeared in political circumstances. And amongst them are people who went into exile and never returned home. Some may have died in exile, others might have died while operating inside South Africa. So our team brings together two capacities: a forensic capacity by using forensic anthropologists who specialize in the human skeleton, because we are talking about skeletonized remains at this point after 4 decades. And we also have a research and investigation component that links together with the forensic to try to identify viable excavation sites.
James Mapanka, coordinator of the Reparation and Reburial Task Team, has acknowledged the community's concern over the absence of names of the ancestors. However, he has urged communities to proceed with their burials, emphasizing the importance of restoring dignity over the need for identified names.
You see, the unfortunate part of this reburial, we can't attach names to the human remains, but we know for sure that it comes from Namakwa Korana people. So what we've decided as a task team, let's embrace as a Khoisan community, let's embrace these human remains and own them as our ancestors and bury them in a dignified way, even if we don't have the names.
Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
A Doctors Without Borders report has revealed devastating stories of violence, hunger, and collapsing health care in South Darfur in Sudan. Doctors Without Borders, or MSF Health Manager Dr. Ali Al-Mohammed, unpacks the impact the war is having on civilians.
The situation in South Darfur is really poor, and the violence is impacting a lot the population. There is lack of humanitarian assistance in South Darfur. There is attack on people. There are violence against civilian and infrastructure. I mean, in our report, we mentioned between January 2024 and January 2025, more than 650 survivors of sexual violence receiving medical care in our supported clinics. So these 650 survivors were the one who received care at our clinics or supported clinics. So the number is expected to be much higher than that. And in our report, we are really focusing on the testimonies of the survivors. So when we are saying more than 50% reported that they were assaulted by armed or non-civilian person or armed groups, this is really based on their testimonies. They mentioned that some of them were in military uniform, some of them were in police uniform, and this is what we are reporting. We are dealing with the consequences of food insecurity in South Darfur. We are treating malnutrition. We are providing some food ration for the patients with malnutrition, but we are not really treating the main, or we are managing the main cause of malnutrition, which is lack of availability of food or access to food. There have been some food distributions in some areas in Darfur, but it's still not sufficient. And without sufficient food supplies and food distribution and also increase the access of humanitarian actors that are focusing on food security, and we won't be able only to these malnutrition cases.
That was Doctors Without Borders Emergency Health Manager, Dr. Ali Al-Mohammed. Just all right. It's coming now to the next hour of Africa Rise and Shine, and a very good morning to you and welcome. If you've just joined us, we are live streaming throughout our various social media platforms. That is Instagram, on YouTube, on X, on Facebook. Lots of ways to connect with us.
I tell you, and you know, with the way media is going now, what's fascinating me is that we're on radio, but I'm busy looking at a camera. It's such a bizarre thing. But this is how we are engaging with our audiences, because this is the world that we're living in. It's no longer just radio, it's radio vision now, I think.
Yeah, radio vision.
And
the big brother of radio.
The sun is out. I'm so pleased about that. So maybe over the worst of our cold snap, we'll have to wait and see. It was snowing in many parts of the country yesterday. So next half an hour, big one for you.
Yeah, we're talking about South Africa's national dialogue that the president of the country, Ramaphosa, has recently announced in terms of getting together different groups of society to talk about what's needed in the country to move it forward. We'll be chatting about that, and also livestock. There's a regional forum on the International Year of Camelids and Sustainable Livestock Transformation in Africa. That's underway in Nairobi in Kenya. We'll be talking about that.
But first, here's your news with Jwalane Tulongwepe, followed by your sports headlines with Figile Lingwat.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Zambia's late former President Edgar Lungu's body is expected to be repatriated from South Africa today. Lungu died in the country where he was receiving specialized medical care last week. Meanwhile, the acting leader of the Patriotic Front in Zambia, Given Lubinda, has appealed to the nation and its leadership to honor Lungu's final wishes. Speaking at a memorial service in Pretoria, Lubinda says Zambia should uphold the dignity he was denied in life and now in death. Kaelihle Khumalo has the story.
The acting president of the Patriotic Front, Given Lubinda, has lamented how former President Lungu was treated after leaving office. He recalled how his home was once surrounded by police and his gates broken down by officers who once saluted him as head of states. The Zambian diaspora expressed solidarity and agreed that Lungu's legacy must be respected and his memory preserved with dignity and fairness. Meanwhile, the Zambian government has appealed to people to refrain from inflammatory statements and hate speech pertaining to the funeral of the former president, saying this moment calls for unity, love and compassion.
The Eastern Cape government in South Africa has confirmed that 11 people are missing following floods that heavy rain caused in the province yesterday. The minibus in which those who are missing were travelling in was swept into a river in the colony. Most of them are believed to be learners. The death toll stands at 9. Provincial government spokesperson Kuselo Aranki.
In the Arfrenzo area, just outside Kokstad, that were trapped in the snow, and farmers in that area were able to assist and ensure that those people are able to at least to be in a safe environment. And also in the Buckley area, people that were trapped in the snow in that area were rescued. And that was the only pass in our province as of late last night that was still very much closed, and we will assess the situation again this morning.
Still in South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa has announced that a national convention will take place on the 15th of August this year to set the agenda on challenges and opportunities facing the country. The president says the national convention will be representative of the people of South Africa. He says all sectors of society will be given a voice to determine how problems should be addressed and how to build a better country for future generations. Ramaphosa has called on citizens to unite to define a vision for South Africa for the next 30 years.
We are therefore called upon at this moment to direct all our efforts to build a thriving, inclusive economy that creates jobs and opportunities. We are called upon to build safer communities and create a better future for our children. We are also called upon to give all sectors of our society, men and women, young and old, persons with disabilities, the LGBTQI community, and urban and rural people a voice. It is an opportunity to forge a new social compact for the development of our country for different stakeholders, government, business, labor, civil society, men and women, communities, and citizens.
Post-mortem results from the death of the Kenyan blogger who died in police custody show he was hit on the head and his death was likely to have been caused by assault. Albert Ojwang's death has sparked widespread outrage in Kenya, with rights groups demanding that police be held accountable. The 31-year-old was detained following a complaint by the deputy police chief, who accused him of tarnishing his name on social media. An autopsy conducted by 5 pathologists who released a unanimous report revealed that Ojwang had severe head injuries and suffered neck compression and multiple soft tissue trauma. And finally, the US has condemned the sanctions that several Western allied governments have imposed on 2 Israeli cabinet ministers for inciting violence in the West Bank. The countries are the UK, Norway, Australia, New Zealand and Canada. The sanctions, including travel bans and asset freezes, are against Israel's National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir and Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich. Sharon Bryce-Pease has the details.
A statement by Marco Rubio, the U.S. Secretary of State, condemned the sanctions imposed on the 2 sitting cabinet ministers, saying it did not advance U.S.-led efforts to achieve a ceasefire in Gaza, bring all the hostages home and end the war. Rubio said they rejected any notion of equivalence and that Hamas was a terrorist organization that committed unspeakable atrocities. He said he wanted to remind their partners not to forget who the real enemy was and urged a reversal of the decision, while saying the US stood shoulder to shoulder with Israel. The 5 nations earlier said they had engaged with the Israeli government extensively on the issue, yet settler violence continued with encouragement and impunity.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulongwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headline, Eswatini go head-to-head with Tanzania in the final Group C fixture of the Kwasafa Cup today. And the Rwanda national sitting volleyball team has commenced preparations for the upcoming Africa Sitting Volleyball Championships in Kenya. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
A national convention which will set the agenda for South Africa's much anticipated national dialogue will be held on the 15th of August. President Cyril Ramaphosa appointed a 31-member team to form the Permanent Persons Group that will guide the national dialogue. Ramaphosa says the dialogue would not be a one-time event, but in phases, starting from local consultations and sectoral engagements, and then proceeding to provincial and national gatherings. Sibahle Mota reports.
An announcement that many have been waiting for. Ramaphosa has finally shed light on the eagerly awaited national dialogue. Leading up to the dialogue, the president says the country will have a national convention this year, which is meant to set the tone. He says that the process will be people-led and will represent the diversity of all South Africans.
Through their various political, social, and other formations, in their workplaces and places of worship, communities, villages, and sites of learning, South Africans will, in the months following the National Convention, be encouraged to be in dialogue to define our nation's path into the future. The views, concerns, and proposals that will emerge from this conversation will be brought together at a second National Convention that is planned to be held in the beginning of next year. This second national...
Ramaphosa has also appointed an eminent person group which will guide and champion the national dialogue. Former Independent Electoral Commission Chairperson Dr. Brigalia Bam, former Constitutional Court Judge Edwin Cameron, Banyana coach Dr. Desiree Ellis, Spring Captain Siya Kolisi, and former MP Lindiwe Mazibuko are some of the people who will form part of this group.
Through the national dialogue, we seek a shared vision of what it means to be a South African and develop a new national ethos and common value system. It is an opportunity to forge a new social compact for the development of our country. A compact that will unite all South Africans with clear responsibilities for different stakeholders, government, business, labor, civil society, men and women, communities, and citizens.
Deputy President Paul Mashadile will chair the Interministerial Committee to coordinate government's contribution to the national dialogue. President Ramaphosa elaborates.
An interministerial committee has been established under the chairpersonship of the Deputy President to coordinate government's contribution to the national dialogue. We will be establishing a steering committee comprised of representatives of various sectors of society to set strategic priorities and coordinate implementation of the national dialogue process. The Secretariat, which is responsible for day-to-day management of national dialogue activities, will be housed at NEDLEC.
Ramaphosa says that the national dialogue is a very important moment in South Africa's history as South Africans will come together as a nation. I am Sibahle Mota in Johannesburg.
June is Youth Month in South Africa. Celebrate Africa's young voices with us. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Are you fluent in French, Chinyanja, Portuguese, and Kiswahili? Are you passionate about radio? And are you looking to work in South Africa? Do you have papers that qualify you to work in South Africa? In that case, we might have an opportunity for you to work for Channel Africa. Send us your CV and demo at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Remember, if you don't hear from us within 14 days, it means you have not made it or you have not been selected. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
All right, on that national dialogue that we just introduced to you now, let's speak to Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman, founder of The Gift of the Givers, a humanitarian organization. It's based in South Africa, but it's very much international. We've known about that. He was appointed by the president to be part of the eminent persons group that will guide the national dialogue. Dr. Suleiman, thank you for joining us again. It's always great catching up with you on Channel Africa. How are you on this Wednesday?
Good morning. I'm fine. Thank you very much.
Right. The announcement by our president, President Ramaphosa, that the National Convention has been announced, saying this will be citizen-led and it will set the tone for a national dialogue plan for August. What major problems will this dialogue look at in terms of those listeners of us who are not in the country, who need a better understanding of the problems that South Africa faces? You're one of the members of that team of Eminent Persons Group.
Yes, there's many problems in South Africa, and they're not insurmountable. But at the same time, whilst we're highlighting the problems, there are several things that we can fix. So I don't want it to be only a problem-finding exercise. I need it to be a solutions-oriented exercise also. We have, because of our inroads in various parts in all parts of the country, so Gift of the Givers, we have networks on the ground. We know the issues, what unemployment, what the problems in health services, in education, in water, in hunger, as many aspects. The injudicious use of money, the issues of corruption. But whilst I'm mentioning all those things which are negative, there are also very positive steps to start addressing these things. I've seen various changes in government departments over the last 6 months to a year, where people are more committed to making things work better, both from a political point of view, meaning members of the political parties who are in government, and also the civil servants who belong to any political party or no political party. And there is movement on both sides to try to fix the system. In addition to that, there has been better buy-in and bigger buy-in from corporates and NGOs. Of course, the limiting factor is the availability of money. And South Africa has a very small tax base of 7.4 million people to look after 65 million people. It doesn't matter which political party is in power and which government in the world sends their own government to work here. 7.4 million people can't look after 65 million people. It's impossible. So we have to look at avenues in a way we can increase income, create jobs, support the economy, reduce debt, stop wasting money, be prudent in the finances, and also a message to those corporates who keep saying government is corrupt. Government is not corrupt. There are corrupt people in government, but there are people in corporates that corrupt government also, or people in government, where prices are highly inflated, where you can pay 10 times the price in the normal private sector compared to the government sector. These are all the type of issues that we have to address. And we've got a list of those things. We also have people on the ground who can come forward with advice, because this is about a dialogue. It's about talking to other people, to speak to other people who are experts in their own field, entrepreneurs, people, how social engineers, those who create jobs, those who deal with crime, challenges for the youth. So we draw on the expertise of the entire nation instead of depending only on people inside government.
Given this chance, do you believe that South Africans can come together to help reshape the landscape of the country, or will this call take some convincing in terms of participation?
Well, South Africans have been skeptical. First of all, South Africans have always come together to fix the country and do things together. COVID was a classic example of how government, corporates, health workers, private sector, ordinary people, just ordinary people, they don't belong to any NGO, they just came forward. South Africa has done that before. We've stood together in the World Cup in 1995, the Rugby World Cup. We stood together in the Soccer World Cup of 2010. We stood together when there was xenophobia. We stood together when there were civil unrest in Durban. We stood together when there were, KZN, not only Durban, when there were other challenges. We are a nation that stands together. What we need to do is to rebuild trust. We need to assure the people that we're not saying things, and this committee should definitely not be the rubber stamp society. I will not agree to that at all. It should be a committee that influences government, not only giving thought, but want to follow up and see action take place on the recommendations. So all we need is one test case. We need to say, this was the proposal put forward, government looked at it, and they responded. It takes one step at a time. Once you fix one step, and they see 2 and 5 and 7, we will then get buy-in from the country, because as trust will grow, support will grow, patriotism will kick in, and people will say, finally, this is for us.
The part of that this is not going to be a one-time event, but it's going to be carried out in phases, starting from local consultations and sectoral engagements. What do you think of this part of the strategy?
It's important to engage as many people as possible, but you don't have to wait for the one or the other. I believe in the concept of low-hanging fruit. What you can fix same time, we don't have to wait 6 months to have that dialogue, because everybody in that committee knows something about what needs to be fixed. So we don't have to have a long discussion with the country and then wait to implement. The ideas that I have many ideas myself, speaking for myself. I'm sure many of the other guys on the group have their own ideas, the business guys, the sports people, the religious people. We can come with those ideas, and whilst waiting for the other dialogue, we can start discussing what we can implement immediately. And there shouldn't be a delay process. The country needs help urgently, not in 6 months or 1 year or 2 years time. It has to be done tomorrow, or even this afternoon, not tomorrow. So, it needs instant action, and that's what we should start off. And that's the aim of the committee, how I understand it. You invited us, you want us to be part of the group. These are our recommendations. We start now, and other things can develop as we go along.
On infighting within the Government of National Unity, or the GNU, over national budget issues and black empowerment laws, how can business leaders step into this one, as they're also going to be part of the discussions? And could they prove to bring much needed insight?
Well, whenever there's a problem, we need an alternative. And they will say, okay, we don't agree with this. The policy is, the principle is, that's the step towards fixing things. Okay, you don't agree with this, but you do agree that all the masses of people need equity. They need equal development. They need access to markets. They need access to opportunities. If you do agree with that, and you should agree to that, then what are the alternatives you are proposing if you say that you don't agree with the laws the government is making? It's not about you or the corporates, about the entire country. So whatever thing they step against, you have to ask them, then what is your framework, or what is the policy you would use to uplift the people of our country? They waited before 94 and they're waiting after 94. Tell us what you would do. And they come with something very sensible, very constructive, that can make a difference, that can grow the economy, then yes, we should listen to it.
Your thoughts when you were called that you're going to be part of the Eminent Persons Group, finally? It's not a surprise to any of us, but how did you feel?
Well, they asked me, I said, of course, I'm a patriot. And when somebody, I'm very keen to work, we must always look at things with good intention.
Yeah.
When someone invites you to do something, say, okay, I believe in that you want to do this with good intention and you want to fix the country, so we will hold your hand. As long as we have the good intention and we see the good action. I can't turn away from that because in any case, we're doing that already. We're doing that for 32 years, trying to fix things here, there, and everywhere. We have a very good relationship with government, with all the political parties, with the ministers, with the civil servants. And when it comes to a lot of things, we get called by government. Right now, all the disasters in the country, we get called by government. We get called first. We're in multiple places at the same time. We've shown we have no agenda. We're not here to unseat or dethrone or destroy anybody. We are only here to build a country in our interests, the interests of our children, our grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, for all of us. People have suffered for too long. We need to fix the system. And yes, so when they invited me, I was happy, because I want to participate. It just gives me another avenue to have more influence, to direct energies to more people, as long as I'm repeating, this is not a rubber stamp society. If we're serious about implementing what we're suggesting, and we know exactly what we're talking about and what we're doing, because we do that in the ground, then I'm very happy and hope we can rope more people in with more ideas to do greater service in the interest of the country.
Well, Doctor, thank you so much again for joining us. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
That's Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman, founder of the Gift of the Givers, a humanitarian organization. He was appointed by the President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, to be part of the eminent persons group that will guide this national dialogue recently announced. And we're going to get more analysis on this story. Stay with us.
June is Youth Month in South Africa. Celebrate Africa's young voices with us. Channel Africa. Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
Also, to join us for reaction on this is Seth Mazibuko, who is one of the most prominent leaders of the June 16, 1976 Soweto uprisings here in South Africa. Seth, thank you for joining us. How are you this Wednesday? Seth, are you there? Okay, I think we're having some challenges in terms of Seth being able to hear us or us being able to hear him. So our producers are sorting that one out. Your thoughts on the national dialogue for South Africa? Tell us at Channel Africa 1. You can find us on X. You can find us on Instagram as well as TikTok. We're live streaming on YouTube, so you can send your comments there as well. Do you think as South Africans we can come together and speak with one voice? I know as far as rugby is concerned, it's one of the sports that has brought us together as South Africans, and one of those members in that prominent or eminent rather persons group is our Springbok captain. That's our national rugby team in South Africa, Siya Kolisi. He's going to be part of those chats. What are your thoughts on even the members that are 31 that will be spearheading the panel discussions? And would you, as a South African, want to get involved and show up wherever you need to in terms of those discussions? At Channel Africa 1 is our handle on social media. Seth Mazibuko, we welcome you now, and thanks again for making time for us on Channel Africa. Seth, can you hear me? All right, let's drop the line and maybe try Seth again. Seth Mazibuko, of course, being one of the most prominent leaders of the June 16, 1976 Soweto uprising that happened here in South Africa. We'll be commemorating that day this coming Monday. So the timing of this announcement as well and the thoughts that Seth has to share with us is one thing that we need to know. I think that will be my first point in asking. And then, of course, the issue of unemployment, which is prominent amongst the youth. The Youth Day, that is June 16, is commemorated, and those are some of the points, or one of the points that usually comes up on the day. We'll discuss that after this.
Embrace our young voices this month. Channel Africa, celebrating Youth Month. Are you fluent French, Chinyanja, Portuguese, and Kiswahili. Are you passionate about radio? And are you looking to work in South Africa? Do you have papers that qualify you to work in South Africa? In that case, we might have an opportunity for you to work for Channel Africa. Send us your CV and demo at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Remember, if you don't hear from us within 14 days, it means you have not made it or you have not been selected. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Zilipendwa na Abedi Jean de la Croix.
Kwa nini wanamuziki wengi sana wa kizazi kipya hawafiki mbali pale wanapofanya muziki?
Ni kwa sababu kitu cha kwanza ambacho naweza nikaongelea nikagusia zaidi sana ni kusema kuwa wale wasanii wanapotoa ngoma yao ya kwanza ikiwa kama kahiti kidogo tu, wanaanza kutamba mitaani, wanaonekana kama wapo majuu zaidi sana.
Kuna wanamuziki wengine ambao wanakimbilia kwa waganga wa jadi. Hivi muziki na dawa vinaendana?
Kitu cha kwanza naweza nikasema ni kuwa muziki na dawa haviendani. Lakini muziki ni kipaji.
Kuna watu wengine wanashutumu wasanii wengine kwamba wanaroga.
Wanaroga, wale wasanii kama wanaroga ni kutokujiamini tu. Lakini kitu cha muhimu sana ni kipaji.
Zilipendwa kila Jumamosi kuanzia saa 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati hadi saa 1 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
25 minutes past 8 Central African time. Let's try Seth again now, our second guest on this national dialogue, which has been announced by President Cyril Ramaphosa. This agenda for South Africa's much-anticipated national dialogue will be held on the 15th of August. Seth Mazibuko is one of the most prominent leaders of the June 16, 1976 Soweto uprising. Joining us now. Thank you for your time, Seth. How are you?
I'm humbled, ma'am, and thank you for inviting me. It's humbling to be part of this conversation.
Oh, we appreciate your time. And we are commemorating June 16 this coming Monday in South Africa as the youth were uprising in terms of that 1976 year. What are your reactions to the announcement of this national dialogue and the timing of it being, well, the announcement at least, because this dialogue will happen in August, being just before Youth Day?
Can I tell you something? Is that not only do we have to look at the day 16th, but on the 13th of June, if we were to talk national dialogue, students met for the first time, coming from different schools in Soweto to decide on the leadership and also on the date June 16. So I find it very interesting that the president had to make this announcement just a few days before June 13th. But that being the issue, I'm just worried about not as to when he's announcing it, but where my problem is, this country will seem to be committing one and the same mistake and not learn from where we're coming from. Issues of national dialogue started even when we started negotiating for the so-called this democracy. Let's just not forget that there were elites that negotiated and even drafted the constitution of this country, who met for years in Codesa 1, 2, 3. None of the people down on the ground, none of them had their voice there. I can assure you today. That is why even what came out there never served the purpose of looking after the poor. Sorry, I've got a terrible flu. The poor and those who are on the ground. And we seem to be doing the same thing now. When, to me, this is just some form of what one can call renegotiating social cohesion, renegotiating a new, agenda for South Africa. And again, you look at the list of people who are taking leadership. There isn't the representation of the people who are having problems with electricity in Soweto, who are having problems with water in Kwalanga, Kwanyanga. And you are having people who have some prominence either in soccer, celebrity, or in rugby. And all I'm asking, when for goodness sake, can South Africa start listening to the voice of the oppressed and deal with issues of the oppressed?
So on that point, then, the voices of the oppressed, Dr. Seth, the unemployment rate in the country will form part of major discussion points. We are at 32% as it stands in unemployment figures. What should we anticipate, or maybe what do you anticipate the concerns that will be expressed here will include when ordinary young people in South Africa are included in the chats?
The point is, again, you are saying we are going to do some academic research of percentages and all that. That doesn't answer the question that says, have you talked to me? When you say young people, I was with young people just the day before yesterday who were starting to plan, even for that matter, 50th anniversary of June 16 next year, who are still saying 50 years after June 16, after that fateful morning on a Wednesday on June 16, we still are nowhere. In the middle between that time, we even heard fees must fall. And to me, fees must fall and the decolonization of education was still but the continuation of what we started in 1976. What's new? What is new that these eminent persons, big names, I don't know what eminent is, but how are we making eminent the issues of people on the ground? I'll forever ask that question. I'm saying 30 years after democracy, we're not even supposed to be even calling these reflections. We're supposed to be saying, how do we refocus for the future? But what has happened is that now we have we've been up. We do some of these things, let me tell you, for PR purposes, or maybe for trying to make us look good. And when we do so, we look for these big names, we look for these eminent persons so that we can think they're speaking on behalf of those who are not eminent.
We're going to have to leave it there, Seth, because we are out of time. But again, we appreciate your very important insights into this matter. I imagine this is a topic we're going to continue. So hopefully we can get a hold of you again if we do decide to elaborate. Thanks for your time.
I hope I'll get my phone right that time and then I can be able not to deal with the show.
And you definitely won't be coughing by then, I'm sure. By 2 days' time, you'll be healed. Thank you. Thank you so much. No, you'll be fine. Don't worry. Seth Mazibuko is one of the most prominent leaders of the June 16, 1976 Soweto uprising, and that day will be commemorating on in the country on Monday next week. But right now, 31 minutes past 8 it is Central African time. Let's say good morning to Jolani Tulo Mwepe with our news headlines.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Making headlines, the Zambian government and former President Edgar Lungu's political party are at loggerheads over his funeral arrangements. The government announced that there would be a state funeral and declared that the official venue for mourning would be at a lodge it owns in the capital, Lusaka. Struggle stalwart Mavuso Msimang says there is a sense of urgency in South Africa to tackle the challenges that the country is facing, especially the high unemployment rate. President Cyril Ramaphosa has announced that a national convention will take place on August the 15th this year to set the agenda for a national dialogue on the country's challenges. And finally, the US has condemned the sanctions that several Western allied governments have imposed on 2 Israeli cabinet ministers for inciting violence in the West Bank. I will have details on these and other stories at 9 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
It's time for your sport, and the sports desk this morning is Figil Lingwet.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. We begin with football news. Eswatini go head-to-head with Tanzania in a must-win match at the Free State Stadium in their final Group C fixture of the ongoing COSAFA Cup. Eswatini is fully aware that anything short of victory will draw the curtain on their campaign. Seeded into one of the 2-3 team brackets, the Kings Shield currently sit second after collecting a solitary point from their opener and must now edge past the already eliminated Taifa Stars to secure a place in the knockouts. Eswatini find themselves walking a fine line once again in the pursuit of a knockout berth, having not progressed past the group stage since 2022. With just 2 matches available to stake their claim for a top spot, Sihlangu Semnigati were forced to settle for a point in the opening fixture against table toppers Madagascar. More football news. Bafana coach Hugo Broos says choosing a 23-player squad for World Cup qualifiers in September will be difficult as he has a large pool of players to choose from. He was speaking after a 2-0 win over Mozambique in a friendly encounter played at Peter Mokaba Stadium in Polokwane, South Africa's Limpopo province last night. The victory came after they played a goalless draw against Tanzania last Friday. Bruce says he has plenty of players to choose from to form a squad.
Everything is positive, and this is something that will make my job very difficult in the next months. We have 23 players there. You know that there are still maybe also 23 who are with their club, still with their club, or who are at home. So that makes that you can choose now in between 40 players. This will be difficult because you have to drop players in September. Players maybe who deserved it, but okay. I have to make choices.
Bruce says now is the time for transition to replace older players with younger ones.
The selection of March, I think there were 12 or 13 players around 30 and over. It's time to start and little by little to get the team younger. We have to drop down others, but I've never been afraid to drop players. We will do it now also and try to do it now also, even when there are important games for World Cup qualifiers.
Let's end with volleyball. The Rwanda national sitting volleyball team has commenced preparations for the upcoming Africa Sitting Volleyball Championship set to take place at Moi International Sports Center, Kasarani in Nairobi from the 14th to the 9th of July. Head coach Mossad Eluati confirmed that training is already underway with players grouped to work on fitness and technical skills. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, File Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Embrace our young voices this month. Channel Africa, celebrating Youth Month. Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Let's find out what's happening in the world of economics. Here's Tabiso Lehuku with our business news.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. Results of a study that South African Financial Services Group, Nedbank, and the National Association of Automotive Component and Allied Manufacturers have released has highlighted challenges that local manufacturers are facing. They include pressure to shift to low-carbon operations or risk losing their competitiveness, as well as lack of access to affordable technology and capacity to measure emissions. They have led to uncertainty around reporting frameworks and the cost of compliance. Trade, Industry and Competition Department's Lester Bower.
But it is always not an easy space because we do have to deal with the issues of multilateralism. So we sit in the WTO, so we cannot just ignore that we signed to these things. We cannot just tomorrow go and all of a sudden do as our esteemed world president and put 110 tariffs there on the world and say we will stop everybody from coming in here.
South Africa's Basic Education Minister, Siviwe Gwagube, says that the Government of National Unity has a mammoth task of ensuring that more job opportunities are created for the country's youth. She says it is heartbreaking that many young graduates are still unemployed. Gwahube was part of President Cyril Ramaphosa's engagement with beneficiaries of the Presidential Youth Program in Pretoria.
It's heartbreaking, and that is the reality of our unemployment crisis in South Africa. There are people who are educated, who find themselves applying just to be education assistants. And it's heartbreaking because those people should be in full-time employment. And so we celebrate this opportunity for young people to be able to be upskilled and in places of work for 6 months.
South Africa's retail banking sector is continuing the trend of downsizing and scaling back their physical presence in the country as clients turn to digital options. An assessment of all banking branches at full year 2024 shows that the country has seen the net closure of 9 branches among the top 5 legacy banks, with the Standard Bank narrowing its footprint the most. Channel Africa business reporter Innocent Simosa has more.
The numbers reflect data as of February 2025. According to the assessment, the number of branches across the banks dropped from 3,299 branches in December 2023 to 3,990 branches in December 2024.
Independent economist Tsepo Khadima says Botswana's current government has failed to define the country's macroeconomic policy trajectory and ensure that the economy is diversified. Botswana's economy mainly depends on its garment industry. Khadima's comment comes as the World Bank's Macro Poverty Outlook 2025 has shown that Botswana may breach its debt ceiling unless fiscal deficits are reduced. The government of Botswana recently acquired 2 loans from the African Development Bank and the Botswana Public Officers Pension Fund amounting to $532 million. Khadima comments.
Things are going to look a lot more bleaker because these institutions tend to restrict the borrowers, such as the country of Botswana. And one is surprised as to why Botswana did not tap into the private capital through the bond market largely, because that would have given them some latitude in terms of how to diversify the economy. So right now I can't see them being able to diversify the economy.
Oil prices softened in Asian trade as markets assessed the outcome of US-China trade talks yet to be reviewed by President Donald Trump, with weak oil demand from China and OPEC plus production increases weighing on the market. Brent crude futures declined 19 US cents or 0.3% to trade at $66.680 US a barrel, while US West Texas Intermediate crude fell 16 cents or 0.3% to $64.82. Meanwhile, on the supply side, OPEC Plus plans to increase oil production by 411,000 barrels per day for July as it looks to unwind production cuts for a 4th straight month, with some analysts not expecting regional demand to soak up these excess barrels. A look at your financial indicators at this hour. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 550. Botswana 13 Budo 21. Kenya 128 shilling 417, and Zambia 25 kwacha. The BRICS countries, I'll start here in South Africa, where the dollar will cost you 17 rand 71 cents. In China, it's at 71.18. Russia 78 rubles 63, and in Brazil, the dollar is trading at 5.56. In India, 85 rupees 59. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 87 to the euro. Commodities markets: gold at $3,338, platinum $1,221 per ounce, Brent crude oil is at $66.71 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Thabiso Lohoko.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
As climate challenges intensify and food systems face increasing pressure, Africa's livestock sector is being reimagined for sustainability and resilience. A key part of this conversation is happening right now in Nairobi, where the Regional Forum on the International Year of Camelids and Sustainable Livestock Transformation is currently underway. The event, co-hosted by the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization and the African Union's Inter-African Bureau for Animal Resources, highlights the crucial roles of camels, particularly in dryland economies, and explores how livestock innovation can support food security, climate adaptation, and economic growth. Well, to help us unpack all of this, we're now joined by Beda Haile Gabriel, who's the FAO's Assistant Director General and Regional Representative for Africa. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So, Mr. Haile Gabriel, let's start with the big picture. What's the main goal of this regional forum, and why is it significant right now?
The regional forum has the kind of twin objectives. One is to celebrate a very important animal in Africa, particularly in the Sahel, in the Horn of Africa, in North Africa, and this is camel. This is the International Year of Camel, and we thought it deserves a regional forum to celebrate its contribution. The second one is much bigger, and FAO has been convening international global conference on sustainable livestock transformation, and this regional forum for Africa wants to zoom in on issues around sustainable livestock transformation in Africa. That is the purpose.
So Africa is home to over 80% of the world's dromedary camels. Why are camelids gaining renewed attention, and what makes them so vital in the context of climate change and food security?
You're absolutely right. Africa is home to the majority of the camelids, but then their productivity, the benefits that they can give is not commensurate with their number. Yes, they are very central to the livelihoods of economy, the livelihoods of countries such as Kenya, Somalia, Ethiopia, in the Sahel. They represent the single source of milk, for example, for children in pastoral communities. But then the attention they have been receiving from policy, from investment, for improvement has not been that high. And it is precisely because of this reason that we want to promote the camelids' contribution in the pastoral communities in Africa in general.
So what are some of the main outcomes and solutions that are being discussed at the forum when it comes to transforming Africa's livestock systems?
The regional forum brought together a number of stakeholders from government, from private sector, from pastoral communities, from farmers, development partners, and so on. And if we want to transform not just the camelid subsector, but also the livestock sector in general, for it to contribute significantly to the African economies and livelihoods, we must transform them. The current level of productivity is very low. The value chain, we're talking about broken value chains in Africa, actually. So if camels contribute a lot to food security and nutrition in terms of milk, in terms of meat and so on, we have to address the issue of productivity, the issue of diseases, the livestock diseases, the issue of value chains, and we need to promote trade so that those who depend and invest on livestock and camels benefit significantly from this activity. And so the role of each and every stakeholder, the public sector, the private sector, the development partners, the farmers, the pastoralists, everyone has to contribute, and most importantly, governments, I think, will play, and they have committed to play important roles to create and sustain the necessary environments for this sector to strive.
So you've spoken about the untapped economic potential of camels. Could you elaborate a little bit on how this translates perhaps into jobs, trade, or regional development opportunities?
In terms of livestock number, Africa also has, whether it is cattle, sheep, goats, there is a lot of huge potential. But in terms of what we get from this huge number, it's very insignificant. It's a kind of paradox. As you know, currently the African Union is rolling out on the Africa Continental Free Trade Area in many countries. If you want to promote trade in livestock and livestock products, we have to address a lot of issues. The health issues, the issue of standards, the issue of quality, and so on. So there is a need to improve infrastructure, both health infrastructure as well as production and trade infrastructure. And so the significance of the discussion and the outcomes of the discussions that are going on at the moment will, we believe, address those strategic issues.
So maybe beyond economic value, camels, we know, play a survival role, particularly in arid and semi-arid regions. How do you think governments can better support pastoralist communities to harness this resources sustainability?
In Africa, resilience is a priority agenda, and there is no other animal that can demonstrate resilience than camel. A few years ago, there was a very severe drought in the Horn of Africa that wiped a lot of livestock, cattle, goats, and other animals. But it was the cattle that really stood firm and became the source of livelihoods for those communities, pastoral communities, who are vulnerable to these kinds of climate shocks. Now, this is the reason, one of the reasons we say we want to strengthen this resilience. We want to make it more productive. We want to make it more healthy. And we want the pastoral communities and those who depend on them benefits from these improvements and transformation directly.
So there's also a growing global concern around biodiversity loss. Are there any threats to the sustainability of camelid species, or are they considered resilient enough for long-term use?
When it comes to the camelids, there are different kinds of camelids. In the Africa region, we're talking about the dromedaries. Partly because of their sturdiness, their resilience, they have been surviving. They have been so through research, advancing research, and basing ourselves on rigorous science and innovation, but also linking this with indigenous knowledge. We want to address the challenges related to biodiversity as well. So the transformational agenda is also encompassing the biodiversity concerns as well.
What role can innovations such as mobile veterinary services, digital livestock tracking, even climate-smart feed systems play in transformation?
This is at the center of what we're saying, and in particular for pastoral communities. Pastoral communities are mobile, and mobile technologies fit perfectly their situation and the challenges they face in terms of health, in terms of other services, traditionally have not been moving with them. So they provide a lot of opportunities to provide improved services, to address issues of health and production, as well as environmental concerns.
How's the FAO working with the African Union and member states to ensure maybe policy shifts actually reach the ground, especially for small-scale and traditional livestock keepers?
FAO has been a reliable partner to member countries for a very long period of time, as well as with the African Union. On animal production and health, our counterparts in the African Union are the African Union Inter-Africa Bureau for Animal Resources, AOIBAR, that is based in Nairobi. We work very closely with them on issues of health, on issues of production, on issues of environmental aspects. At the moment, together with the World Health Organization, the United Nations Environment Programme, the World Organization on Animal Health, we are promoting One Health. And there are so many countries that we work together. And this is not something new. We've been working with countries on transboundary animal diseases. We have been successfully eradicating some of these diseases, lots of vaccinations, addressing the livestock feed issues, rebuilding water facilities for livestock. It's a lot. And now, using science and innovation, and these collaborations are getting deeper with more impactful outcomes.
That's where we're going to have to leave it. Assistant Director General, thank you so much indeed for joining us on the program, and we wish you the best with the rest of your deliberations.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. That's the FAO Assistant Director General and Regional Representative for Africa, Beda Haile Gabriel, speaking to us about camelids. Fascinating subjects. We've got Brother Benjamin in studio to tell us what's happening on the move.
The move has been cancelled. The producers didn't tell you guys.
It's impossible.
It's been cancelled. It's not happening.
It's impossible.
Have any of you ever ridden on a camel?
No, not at all.
Do you know what? This is the original 4x4.
Yeah.
I rode on one of these in Egypt.
Okay. Yeah.
And it can climb things that you just cannot believe.
Wow.
They are really amazing creatures.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you've got to experience this. If you ever get to Egypt or other parts of that region, you've got to do a camel ride. It's
nice,
amazing.
okay.
Okay, how did we get there?
I was just joking. I was just joking. I wanted to startle you a little bit.
Like, we are cancelled. This one is speaking about a camel ride. I'm like, what's going on this morning? Are you guys fine?
Yes.
We get paid to talk, so we might as well talk.
How are you today?
I'm good, man. We're going to be having an interesting subject matter. There's a new report that's been released by the United Nations, the State of the World Population 2025 report. It says something interesting. It says that people are not having children because they don't want them. It's because the environment around them doesn't kind of convince them that they should have kids.
That's sad.
So it's like, we want kids, but inflation, no. When I look at the inflation, I'm not going to be able to. The fact that we are seeing rising living costs, it's definitely a reality. Unfair gender expectations is another thing that the report is also highlighting. And uncertainty about the future is something that a lot of people are worried about.
Is this a global report? Because there are some parts of the world that are growing fast in terms of populations.
Yeah.
Africa in particular.
Yeah.
And then you've got the West, countries like Japan as well that have negative growth. So I wonder if it's the same in all over the world. I suspect we are having children.
You'll be surprised that in Africa we think that we're having the same statistics that we used to. Yes, we've got the largest youth population right now, but with the current dynamics and the current population dynamics that currently exist, can you compare the birth rate today than it was maybe 10 years ago?
But also, I think it's probably also a research that zoomed into people who have the choice.
Yeah.
So there's a certain
No, it's just general.
Is
and
it
I think
general?
obviously it's going to be multiple dynamics in the state of the world, but there seems to be that general feeling that the world is going in a direction where people are like, not so sure.
Do you know what's interesting? What I found, particularly in our societies here, is that men and women are getting married much, much later now.
Yeah.
And are having less and less children, actually.
Yeah, absolutely,
And some women are just saying, I don't need a child. I don't want a child. Don't want to have children. And some men, well, you know.
Yeah.
It's
very interesting. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so definitely it's going to have those different outlooks in different parts of the world.
Wonderful.
But there seems to be that kind of general, dismissal to it. But definitely it looks different in different parts of the world. So we'll also unpack the different dynamics.
Looking after children is work, man. Anyway.
I wonder if they also looked at the angle of are there grandchildren also, are there grandparents who, grandparents age, who say we don't want grandparents.
Anyway, we've got to go. Thanks very much indeed for joining us on The Move, coming up after the news.
My name is Asanda Beda.
And I'm Peter Ndoro.
Bye from us.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Top stories: Asawa disagreements over the funeral arrangements for Zambian former President